Chapter 41, A Tense Negotiation. Caroline sat across from me at the Moon's Shadow Cafe, draped in her usual perfection. Her designer coat hung elegantly over her shoulders, and her makeup was pristine, not a smudge out of place. But her carefully maintained facade couldn't hide the way her fingers drummed against the tabletop, betraying her nerves. That small sign of unease told me everything. I exhaled softly and pulled the agreement closer, skimming the lines carefully again. The sunlight streaming through the window highlighted the stark black ink which seemed to demand compliance. Bella, my wolf, stirred uneasily inside me, her instincts prickling at the tension. "You've read it enough," Caroline said, her voice clipped yet measured. She leaned forward slightly, trying to regain that commanding presence she was known for. "Surely, it's not a difficult choice. I didn't look up from the document. I'm making sure I fully understand what I would be signing." Her lips pressed into a tight smile. "There's nothing complicated. It's straightforward. Fair." "Fair," I murmured, letting the word hang in the air. My gaze flickered to her hands. Her nails were manicured to perfect sharp points, but her tapping fingers betrayed everything, her nerves, her impatience. It made me wonder why she was so desperate. "You're tapping," I pointed out casually, leaning back in my chair to observe her reaction. She immediately stilled her fingers, folding them deliberately in her lap. "I'm not nervous, Freya," she said too quickly. "Are you sure?" I tilted my head. "You seem awfully anxious for someone who holds all the cards." Her eyes narrowed slightly, though her painted smile didn't falter. "I want to make sure everything is clear to you. That's all." I met her gaze unblinking, making sure she saw I wasn't intimidated. With a soft hum, I turned my attention back to the agreement. I heard her exhale quietly, as if suppressing her frustration. "Take your time," she continued after a moment, though the tightness in her voice suggested she wanted anything but that. "This is for your benefit as much as it is for the pack's stability." I made no effort to rush. The document was straightforward, as she said, but the terms weren't exactly small matters. I would leave Northern Ridge Pack territory for 5 years. I would avoid any contact with Aaron before my departure. And I would have no claims tied to my cub when it came to pack rights. It all aligned with what I'd already decided, except for the small detail of settling in a specific pack territory. I hadn't made that choice yet, and her rush didn't sit well with me. The more she pushed, the more my instincts raised their guard. "It's generous of you to ensure financial support from Redwood Pack Resources," I finally said, my voice neutral. Caroline exhaled sharply, her shoulders relaxing slightly as though she hoped my words meant I was falling into her game. "It's the least I can do," she said smoothly, her smile tightening. "The cub," her voice shifted faintly before she caught herself, "it deserves proper care." A small ember of irritation flared in my chest at her calculated tone. Bella bristled slightly, urging me to tread carefully. "And once I adhere to the terms," I said, my voice deliberate and even, "my debt to you will be settled entirely." Her expression brightened for the briefest moment. She nodded quickly. "Absolutely, completely settled. You'll owe me nothing more." She produced a sleek silver pen from her handbag and handed it to me, her hand steadier now, though her eyes burned with expectation. I accepted it, feeling her gaze coil around me like a snake waiting to strike. But instead of signing, I rolled the pen between my fingers, letting a small, amused smile tug at my lips as I watched her composure wobble ever so slightly. Her brow twitched. "Is there something wrong?" she asked, her voice strained with forced politeness. "I'm just thinking," I replied, my voice light, keeping her on edge. "After all, you seem very invested in this." Her fingers gripped the edges of the table. "This agreement ensures clarity," she said, "for both of us, and for the pack." "But why does clarity make you so nervous?" I asked smoothly, still twirling the pen casually. "You appear confident, Caroline, but I can sense hesitation. It almost feels like you're more concerned about me." Color drained from her face briefly before she leaned back, feigning indifference. "You're being paranoid," she said with a brittle laugh. "You've read the document, you know what's at stake, for everyone." My smile widened slightly, but I didn't respond immediately. The silence seemed to unnerve her further. "Fine," she snapped, patience breaking through her mask. "Are you going to sign it or not?" I set down the pen slowly, deliberately, feeling the shift in the balance of power between us. I'm not signing this. Caroline's eyes widened, genuine shock flickering across her face. Excuse me, she exclaimed, her voice tinged with disbelief. What are you trying to pull here, Freya? I don't intend to deceive you, I said, my tone calm. I'll fulfill the terms laid out in this document, but I have no intention of signing it. That's ridiculous, she hissed, her voice sharp now. Why refuse to sign if you plan to abide by the terms? If this agreement isn't meant to trap me, I said pointedly, my signature shouldn't matter, right? Her mask slipped further, anger flaring in her vibrant eyes. This is exactly why you should have. She stopped herself abruptly, biting back whatever impulsive words had been about to spill. Instead, she plastered on a tight smile. I mean, you should consider the consequences carefully, she said, her voice taking on a falsely sweet tone. Not signing leaves loose ends. Loose ends? I raised an eyebrow. I think this is quite simple. Signing or not, I follow the terms. Isn't that what you want? Her eyes narrowed and I could see the sharp calculations in her head churning. Without a signature, there's no guarantee you'll hold to your word. I tilted my head, letting my wolf's confidence shine through my gaze. If I intended to break the terms, a signature would never stop me. You know that as well as I do. Her breathing quickened slightly, the cracks in her composure spreading like fine spiderwebs. For the first time in a very long time, I felt I had the upper hand against Caroline Redwood, and I intended to keep it. So what's this really about? I pressed, leaning forward slightly. Is it about protecting the pack, or is it about safeguarding your own position? She stiffened visibly, but recovered quickly. You have no idea what you're saying. Don't I? I countered swiftly. If you were truly as confident in your bond with Aaron as you claim, why would this agreement even be necessary? Her knuckles flexed faintly against the table, and for a fleeting second the hostility in her eyes burned fiercely. She masked it quickly, but I had seen enough. You, she said quietly, her words venomous, don't understand what's at stake. You keep saying that. I leaned back again, deliberately calm, and yet I keep hearing fear in your voice every time you do. Enough, she snapped, her control breaking for a moment. What do you want, Freya? What is it you're really after? I've told you, I said, my voice firm but calm. I want to settle my debt to you, nothing more. For a moment we stared at each other, the tension crackling in the air like static electricity. Her breathing remained steady but shallow, betraying the turmoil she was fighting to suppress. And you'll uphold these terms? She finally asked, her voice softer now, weary even. I will, I confirmed. Signed or unsigned, my word remains the same. I have no reason to go back on it. Silence fell briefly. Caroline stared down at the table, her painted lips pressed into a hard line. When she finally looked up again, it was with reluctant acceptance. Then so be it, she said, voice tight. But let me be clear, Freya. This commitment of yours, it better hold. It will, I replied confidently. And after this, Caroline, we're finished. My debt to you will be repaid in full. She extended her hand reluctantly. I accepted it, gripping firmly to ensure there was no misunderstanding. I released her hand, my violet eyes locking onto hers. After this, I repeated, my tone cold and final, you'll have no claim over me or my cub. Chapter 42, Debts and Memories. Caroline's smile stretched across her face like a mask. Her eyes stayed cold, calculating. It's for the best, Freya. Deep down, you know it is. Her voice grated against my ears. I fought the urge to snap back, keeping my composure intact. I gathered my things, determined to leave before saying something I might regret. Goodbye, Caroline, I said, cool and distant. My fingers closed around the strap of my bag as I pulled it over my shoulder. I'll hold up my end, as I said. Caroline opened her mouth, but whatever words she planned to speak, I didn't wait to hear them. I turned on my heel, the scrape of the cafe's wooden chair legs screeching against the floor in my wake. The air outside was brisk, biting my skin as soon as I stepped out onto the street. I inhaled deeply, letting the cold air attempt to chill my tension. Bella paced inside me, unsettled, her anger simmering beneath my calm exterior. That woman, I muttered under my breath. Bella growled in agreement. Leaning against my car, I pulled my phone from my coat pocket. The familiar number popped up on the screen, bringing the face of my father to the forefront of my mind. Former Alpha Jonathan Snow, he always had been so strong, so steady. His voice always gave me answers, even when I didn't want to hear them. I hit the call icon and held the phone to my ear. Each ring felt like an eternity. Voicemail. Of course. He was likely deep in the mountains, far from cell service. That was always where he found his peace. "Hi, Dad." My voice softened as though I were speaking to him in person. I handled part of it today. We'll talk when you get back. I miss you." I ended the call and stared at the screen, feeling the phone grow impossibly heavy in my hand. I slipped it back into my coat. My heart still beat a little too fast from the conversation with Caroline, the weight of her words and actions trailing me like shadows. No matter. I needed to move forward. Glancing at my watch, I realized I was late for my visit with Elder Catherine. The idea of her waiting for me, wondering where I was, pushed me into action. The drive to the medical facility was quiet but tense. I focused on the stretch of road ahead, white-knuckling the steering wheel. My mind replayed every second of my meeting with Caroline, and the bitterness in Bella's low growl at the back of my mind didn't help. When I arrived at Elder Catherine's room, the sight of her sitting quietly by the window deflated the frustration hanging over me. Her frail hands cradled an old photograph, her face serene yet tinged with something wistful. I stepped closer, speaking gently. "I'm sorry I'm late." Elder Catherine turned her head slowly toward me. Her watchful eyes met mine, studying me closely, as though reading into the things I wasn't saying. "You look troubled, dear one," she said, her voice soft but firm. A lump rose in my throat. Of course she could see it. Trust the matriarch of the pack to see through any facade. I forced a smile, brushing her concern aside. "Just busy with pack matters," I replied casually, smoothing out the wrinkles on her pillows and tidying up the small items on her table. Elder Catherine didn't push, but her attention remained on me longer than I expected. Then her gaze dropped back to the photograph in her hands. She stared at it with a tenderness I hadn't seen before, her fingers lightly brushing its edges. My curiosity got the better of me. "What's that?" I asked, sitting beside her. A soft smile crossed her lips, though it carried a heavy air of nostalgia. "Would you like to hear the story behind it?" Before I could respond, I felt an unexpected brush against my mind through the mate bond. "Aaron," his voice echoed clearly, catching me off guard. "Where are you?" His words were short, but his tone held an edge of something like concern. "With Elder Catherine," I replied cautiously, my mental voice steady as I waited for his response. "I'll be there for lunch," he stated, his decision clear. His words caught me off guard. "Don't you have pack business?" I questioned, bewildered that he would put aside the endless responsibilities that usually consumed him. "It can wait," he replied, and the bond went silent again. I blinked, momentarily startled by his abruptness. Elder Catherine's knowing eyes met mine knowingly. "Aaron's coming, is he not?" "Yes," I said, softening my tone. She had a way of making me feel like sharing even the simplest things mattered. "He says he'll join us for lunch." Elder Catherine's smile widened as she patted the empty space beside her. "Then we have time for a story before he arrives," she said. The Pack Council's chamber felt suffocating, filled with betas and deltas who couldn't present a single strategy worth hearing. I stood at the head of the table, Logan's displeasure rolling off me in waves. Every wolf in the room felt it. "Is this the best you can come up with?" My words cut through the tension like a blade. Christopher Brooks shifted uncomfortably in his chair before speaking hesitantly. "Perhaps we could approach the Southern Territories first, and—" "Enough." The word left no room for argument. "We'll revisit this discussion tomorrow morning. Come back prepared." The unease in the room was palpable as the council members exchanged glances. No one dared protest. One by one, they vacated their seats and bowed on their way out. As they did, I checked the time on my watch. Freya and Elder Catherine would be waiting. Logan growled softly, coaxing me forward. Lunch at the medical facility suddenly became more important than any council meeting. Heading toward the exit, I didn't expect to smell a familiar scent lingering just outside. Caroline stood there, a lunchbox in hand, her expression cautiously hopeful. "I brought you lunch," she said softly, tilting the container slightly as if to entice me further. The moment she spoke, a dull roar filled the space around us. The whispers of remaining council members reached my ears, grating against my nerves. "He's lucky," someone muttered. First Luna Freya, and now this. Logan growled louder, leaping to attention within me. The energy in the hall shifted abruptly. Don't you all have something useful to do? My voice thundered, cracking through the air like a whip. The remaining council wolves stumbled over themselves in a rush to leave, muttering hasty apologies under their breath. When they were gone, the silence felt sharp. I turned my attention to Caroline, who stared at me with wide, startled eyes. Her face flushed with an uncharacteristic mix of indignation and embarrassment. I didn't mean to disrupt anything, she muttered, breaking eye contact briefly. The edge in my tone softened slightly. The outburst wasn't meant for you, I admitted. Pack matters have been difficult. She nodded, though her earlier discomfort hadn't entirely faded. With careful movements, she held out the lunchbox again. You've been eating poorly, and you've been drinking more than you should. I thought, Caroline, I interrupted, though not unkindly, I already have plans. Her lips parted slightly in surprise, but she quickly masked it with a strained smile. The sandwiches? They're your favorite. I thought. James will take you back to Sequoia territory, I said, gesturing to my waiting assistant. James Morrison appeared promptly at my side, a reliable beta who had perfected the art of understanding commands before they were given. Caroline blinked, her earlier confidence faltering. Aaron, This isn't the time, Caroline. My tone was firm now. Chapter 43. Gentle Moments. The lunchbox felt like a boulder in my hands as I stood there watching Aaron walk away. My breath hitched, my chest tight, but I forced my expression to remain calm. He hadn't even noticed my injured finger, the one I cut while carefully preparing his favorite sandwiches. The little bandage stung against my skin, but it was nothing compared to the sting of rejection. Miss Redwood. A voice snapped my attention back to reality. James Morrison stood there, his posture stiff, his tone polite but unyielding. I'll escort you back to your territory now. I turned to him, holding my chin high. I'll wait in his office, thank you. There are matters I need to discuss with him when he returns. Morrison's face didn't change. His wolf's energy, however, gave him away. He clearly didn't like me being here. No wolves from other packs are allowed in Alpha Aaron's office unless he is present, he stated firmly, his voice even. I narrowed my eyes, holding his unblinking gaze. Do you know who I am? Yes, Miss Redwood, he replied without hesitation. That is exactly why the protocol applies. Heat rose to my cheeks, anger simmering just below the surface. I wanted to snap back, force him into submission through sheer will alone, but I managed to keep my composure. Barely. I thrust the lunchbox toward him, my fingers curling tightly around its handle. Then make sure he gets this later. Morrison stepped back, maintaining that infuriatingly respectful distance. That wouldn't be appropriate, he said, his tone measured, almost cold. You understand. The rejection felt sharper this time. My chest ached with embarrassment, and I had to fight to keep my wolf from growling at the insult. Every wolf nearby could smell my frustration, my humiliation. It lingered in the air like a heavy fog. Fine. My voice was clipped. Let's go then. I walked ahead of him as he guided me toward the exit. Fury burned in my gut with every step I took. James Morrison would regret this. His too perfect loyalty to protocol wouldn't save him when I became Aaron's mate. I'd make sure of it. As the car pulled away from the pack house, I stared out the window, my fingers trembling with restrained rage. Morrison, ever the professional, focused on the road as though ignoring me would erase his earlier disrespect. My wolf was restless inside me, snarling in quiet fury. Soon, I whispered to her, my voice low enough that Morrison couldn't hear. Soon, they'll all respect us. The medical facility was quiet when I arrived. The familiar scent of healing herbs and clean linens greeted me as I walked through the halls. It was calming, but only slightly. My wolf, Logan, was pacing restlessly inside me. I stopped at the doorway to Elder Catherine's room and paused. The sight before me gave me pause. Freya was asleep, her head resting gently on my grandmother's leg. Her breathing was soft and steady, her face peaceful in a way I hadn't seen in a long time. The usual tension that clung to her features seemed to have melted away in her sleep. Don't wake her, my grandmother said softly, her voice warm but firm. I stepped inside and walked closer. Freya didn't stir, though her curls had fallen across her cheek. I resisted the urge to brush them aside. I moved carefully, gathering her in my arms. Her body was light, almost too light, and I couldn't ignore the way dark shadows marred her eyes, even now. Logan quieted the moment she was in my arms, his satisfaction low but palpable. "She's been pushing herself too hard," Elder Catherine commented, watching me as I placed Freya onto the small bed nearby. "That girl never slows down." "I know," I murmured. I adjusted her pillows, making sure she'd stay comfortable. Once she was settled, I hesitated. I didn't want to pull away. My hand moved almost instinctively, reaching out to pinch her cheek softly. Her skin was warm under my fingers. Something about this small action made Logan stir, pleased but aching. "Let her rest," my grandmother reminded me, her tone holding a hint of admonishment. I pulled my hand back abruptly, nodding. "Would you like to see the gardens?" I asked, needing something to shift my focus. A small smile touched her lips. "Only if you're pushing me," she teased. Moments later, we were in the estate gardens. The air was crisp, the scent of winter blooms adding a faint sweetness to the stillness. I pushed the wheelchair at a steady pace, matching my grandmother's preference for an unhurried walk. "She's exhausted," Elder Catherine said quietly after a few minutes of silence. I kept my gaze ahead. "She hasn't been sleeping well." "You should be worried about that," she said, turning her head slightly to look at me. "A mate should worry when his Luna looks like she's carrying the weight of the world." "She's been busy taking care of you," I said, deflecting. "Don't use me as an excuse." Her voice was sharper now, cutting through any attempt I might have made to evade the subject. "She's here every day, Aaron. She sits with me when I don't want to be alone. She reads to me. She keeps the staff on their toes. I see her care for this pack, even when no one's watching. But who's taking care of her?" Her words settled heavily in my chest. I didn't have a good answer. "She's a good girl," she continued, her tone softening again. "But even the strongest needs care. Don't mistreat her." "I'm not mistreating her." My reply came quickly, but even to my ears, it sounded hollow. "Maybe not intentionally," she said carefully, her voice laced with meaning. "But neglect is its own kind of mistreatment, Aaron." Logan whined softly in the back of my mind, echoing her sentiment. I clenched the wheelchair handles tighter, discomfort coursing through me. When we returned to the room, Freya was still asleep. I let out a slow breath, relieved that she hadn't woken to overhear our earlier conversation. Elder Catherine patted my hand. "I'll leave you with her for a bit. Maybe she'll feel better knowing you stayed." I nodded, helping her to the healer's office for her checkup before returning to the room. Freya was still lying there, her chest rising and falling steadily. I settled into the chair beside her bed, taking in the sight. Her lashes fluttered slightly before her eyes opened. She blinked a few times, her violet gaze unsure as it settled on me. Confusion flickered across her face. "Finally awake?" I said. "Elder Catherine," she asked softly, her voice still edged with sleep. She sat up quickly, the embarrassment clear in her hurried movements. "Wanted you to rest," I said. "She specifically asked not to wake you." Her gaze dropped, and she busied herself smoothing out the blanket over her lap. The silence between us was deafening, the weight of unspoken words pressing down heavily. I didn't know what to say, didn't trust myself to speak when Logan was clawing at my thoughts, urging me to do more. Her tired eyes flicked toward me briefly before looking away again. She wrapped her arms around herself, creating an invisible barrier between us. And somehow, that barrier felt like 1,000 miles wide. I clenched the armrests of my chair, my nails digging into the leather. Logan howled softly, his longing for her palpable. But I stayed in my seat, frozen and unable to bridge the distance we'd built between us. Chapter 44, Strained Bonds. I woke slowly, the sound of the hum of the medical facility grounding me. Sunlight streaked through the curtains, warm against my skin. For a brief second, everything was peaceful. Then it hit me like a cold rush of water. I'd fallen asleep. My stomach twisted. Elder Catherine had been in the middle of one of her stories. How could I have just dozed off like that? She must have been waiting for me to wake, disappointed or worse. Bella let out a soft, pitiful whine in the back of my mind. She didn't like the thought either. I sat up quickly, blinking the sleep away, feeling the flush of embarrassment rise to my cheeks. Then I noticed him. Aaron. He was seated a short distance away, his piercing golden eyes locked on me. His face didn't reveal much, but I could feel his energy filling the space, calm yet unsettling. "You're awake," he said, his tone steady, neither kind nor cold. My voice caught. I didn't know what to say. Apologies tumbled over one another in my mind, but none made it past my lips. He stood, approaching me slowly. "Elder Catherine didn't want you woken," he said matter-of-factly, as though he could sense my guilt. "She thought you needed the rest." His hand moved suddenly, brushing a loose strand of hair from my face and tucking it behind my ear. The simple action froze me in place, my heart skipping uneven beats. Bella perked up immediately, her hopeful energy flickering within me. This small act felt intimate, almost thoughtful, and the sudden warmth in my chest betrayed me. For a second, just a second, I allowed myself to fantasize. I imagined his hand lingering a bit longer, his expression softening. Perhaps this was the mate bond finally awakening in him. But reality crushed me just as quickly as the thought formed. Caroline's shadow loomed over everything. She was Aaron's savior, his supposed love and loyalty. He had chosen her every time before. Why would now be any different? I straightened, shoving the traitorous feelings down and bracing myself. Bella whimpered softly, her earlier excitement fading under my control. "Thank you," I said stiffly, my tone colder than I intended. I tried to sit up further, shifting to make space between us. His brows furrowed lightly. He tilted his head as though trying to read me. "What's wrong?" His voice whispered into my thoughts, probing me through the mate bond. "Nothing," I replied, walls firmly in place. "I'm just still waking up." I swung my legs over the side of the bed, preparing to stand. My movements were slower than usual and my body felt heavier. Before I could push myself up, Aaron was there. His hand shot out, ready to help. "No need," I said quickly, jerking back. My reaction was too strong, too obvious, and he noticed. His hand froze mid-reach, hanging in the air. His jaw tightened subtly, though his face remained carefully composed. "Is this your idea of a truce?" he asked evenly, his voice carrying a sharp edge. His golden eyes seemed to cut through me, glinting with icy amusement. "Aaron," I started, my words faltering under his heavy gaze. "Speak," he prompted, folding his arms across his chest. Logan, his wolf, stirred behind those golden eyes. I could feel the rising tension in the room, thick and undeniable. "I didn't mean." "You didn't mean what?" he interrupted, his tone dipping lower. "Well, Virgil, it wasn't intentional," I said quickly. "I was startled, that's all." My voice sounded weak, even to my own ears. "Startled?" he repeated, the disbelief clear. His lips quirked, not in a smile but something harder. "Startled by what? Your alpha?" "I didn't mean it like that." Logan growled faintly, his presence pressing against mine, testing my reaction. It was as though Aaron was seeing how far he could push before I snapped. "I told you," I continued, struggling to keep my voice steady. "I wasn't expecting it, and I reacted." "Masterful excuses," he said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "You're certainly skilled in that art, Luna." The way he said my title stung, like it was an insult rather than a position of respect. I clenched my fists tightly at my sides, the frustration bubbling over but kept barely contained. "I thought we had agreed to a truce." "Is this a truce to you?" he countered, stepping just an inch closer. The tension between us sparked like an electric current. "I'm sorry," I bit out, the words sharp and tense. "I didn't mean to ruin." "Ruin what?" He raised an eyebrow, daring me to finish. The distance between us felt suffocatingly small now, even though he hadn't moved closer than was proper. Or maybe it was the weight of his wolf pressing against mine, demanding submission or compliance. I refused to give him either. "Look," I said stiffly, lifting my chin. "The Elder Catherine will be back soon, and we both know she can sense tension a mile away. Maybe it's better if you—" "If I what?" His voice dropped dangerously low, his alpha presence washing over me like a cold wave. "If you return to pack duties," I finished carefully. His reaction was immediate. The air between us froze, sharper and even more hostile than before. For several heartbeats, he didn't say a word. His gold eyes burned into me, searching, questioning. Then, without warning, he turned sharply, his movements rigid and controlled. "Fine," he snapped, his tone curt and final. The door closed behind him with enough force to rattle the walls, though he hadn't slammed it. Bella whimpered softly, curling into herself within my thoughts. I let out a shaky breath, my fingers brushing against my stomach instinctively. "We just need a few more days," I murmured to myself, though the words felt hollow. Just endure a little longer. Elder Catherine returned not long after. As always, her presence brought warmth to the room, cutting through the lingering tension like sunlight piercing through clouds. The soft smile on her face made me feel both calm and guilty all at once. She deserved better than this, better than us and our fractured bond. "Aaron left, didn't he?" she asked knowingly, as Sarah Parker, one of the nurses, fussed over her blanket. "Yes," I said, forcing myself to smile back. "He said he was called away on pack business." Elder Catherine chuckled lightly, shaking her head. "Of course, but you know," she began, her tone shifting to something more contemplative, "he probably wouldn't have come at all if you weren't here." I froze for just a moment, her words burrowing under my carefully built defenses. Her knowing gaze made it clear she saw more than she let on. She thought his visit had been about me. That small flicker of hope began to rise again, like a stubborn ember refusing to die out. But I quickly crushed it, burying it deep where it couldn't hurt me. No, none of that mattered. "You think too highly of me," I said softly, turning my attention to straightening her bedside table. The smile I gave her was small, but it held a sadness I couldn't entirely hide. Elder Catherine didn't press further, though I could feel her eyes lingering on me, watching as I busied myself with meaningless tasks. Her quiet presence filled the room, steady and soothing. But I couldn't escape the weight of her words, nor the truth they might hold. Chapter 45, Pride and Promises, Aaron's POV. I stormed into my office, the door slamming shut behind me with a loud thud. My mood was dark, and Logan, my wolf, paced angrily inside me, his presence prickling at the surface. Disappointment and frustration churned within me. I yanked off my leather jacket and threw it onto the sofa without care. It landed in a crumpled heap which only mirrored my chaotic thoughts. A sharp knock cut through the silence. "What is it?" I barked, my voice sharp and full of irritation. The door creaked open slightly, and James Morrison, my beta assistant, stepped in cautiously. His movements were slow, deliberate, as though not to agitate the storm already brewing inside me. "Alpha," he addressed me formally. His hands carried a polished lunchbox, and he carefully placed it on my desk as if it were something fragile. "This is from Miss Redwood. She left it for you before returning to her territory." At the mention of Caroline, my patience thinned further. I hadn't even looked at the lunchbox, but irritation mixed with exhaustion already burned in my chest. "Give it to the pack staff," I said coldly, almost dismissively, my gaze fixed on the floor-to-ceiling windows. The view beyond was lost on me as my thoughts swirled back to the unfinished business of the day. James, ever the loyal yet blunt beta, didn't leave immediately. He cleared his throat as though choosing his next words carefully. "Alpha, if I may," he began, and I shot him a warning glance, my golden wolf eyes flashing briefly. "Is it smart to eat food prepared by another she-wolf when you already have a mate?" The question shouldn't have touched a nerve, but it did. I stiffened and turned sharply, my voice cutting through the air like a blade. "Are you questioning my decisions, Beta?" "Never, Alpha," James replied without hesitation, though the faintest hint of sarcasm played at the corners of his tone. The growl that left my chest wasn't entirely human. "Get out," I ordered, the words rumbling and final. James gave a slight bow and backed out of the room. My gaze lingered on the lunchbox for a moment before I turned away with a displeased growl. Logan stirred, an uneasy twist of emotions rumbling low in his form. A few minutes later, James returned, his presence announced by another carefully timed knock. "What now?" I snapped when he stepped in. This time he held a different package. It was pristine and smelled far more delicious than anything else in the room. My wolf's instincts perked up almost immediately at the scent. "From Luna Freya," James informed me, his tone much smoother now. He set the second lunchbox down on my desk with a reverent care, almost as if daring me to compare the two. I stared at him, waiting for further clarity. "The meal is from the Silver Spoon restaurant. Luna had it delivered and ensured it met your preferences," James clarified. It was at that moment that Freya's voice reached me through our mate bond. Her connection was brisk and precise, unemotional even. "Elder Catherine mentioned your eating habits were poor," her voice pointed out. "The chef knows your preferences, so you have no excuse not to eat now." The cash grated against me, not because of what she said, but because of the quiet intent beneath it. "When did you start caring about what I eat?" I questioned, though my tone carried more irritation than curiosity. "Since you're the pack alpha and your grandmother worries about you," she replied smoothly. I scoffed under my breath, muttering about Freya's usual disinterest in me. But something about the mere fact that she'd sent me food refused to leave my mind. It aggravated me further. My emotions were as off balance as they had been all week. I opened her chosen meal, the smoky aroma of perfectly cooked steak hitting me immediately. It was a dish I usually enjoyed. The chef's trademark blend of herbs and sauces was unmistakable. James gestured to Caroline's original lunchbox, still sitting untouched on the desk's corner. "Shall I?" "Distribute all of it to the pack staff," I ordered sharply, turning away from him. "Every last bit." James hesitated, as though caught between amusement and duty. With a curt nod, he said, "As you wish, Alpha," and exited once again with both lunchboxes. Despite leaving Aaron's office earlier, I couldn't bring myself to leave the headquarters entirely. My heart was heavy, my attempts to get close to him backfiring once again. I walked down to the lower floors, lingering near the common areas where I knew the betas and omegas often gathered. My steps faltered slightly as I caught sight of James Morrison, Aaron's alpha assistant. He was holding the lunchbox I had carefully prepared. "James," I called out, my tone a mix of cheer and concern. He turned to face me, his face neutral as always. "Miss Redwood," he greeted politely. "How is Aaron?" I ventured, forcing a smile. "Did he enjoy the sandwiches?" I spent a lot of time making sure they were his favorites. For the briefest moment, James seemed hesitant, but he quickly masked it. "The Alpha had the meal Luna Freya sent from the Silver Spoon. He gave your sandwiches to the pack staff to share." The weight of his words hit harder than I expected. "Oh," I said softly, struggling to mask the sharp sting of rejection. My fingers curled ever so slightly around the strap of my bag, the bandage on my finger a bitter reminder of the effort I'd gone through. "He did compliment the quality of the sandwiches," James added, likely an attempt to soften the blow. "The pack staff was quite pleased." Despite his intentions, the words did nothing to ease the tension building in my chest. Aaron hadn't even tried them. Freya's store-bought meal had overshadowed my handmade one so effortlessly. "Thank you," I mumbled, trying to maintain my composure. "I appreciate you letting me know." James nodded, his duty complete, and walked off, leaving me standing there. I felt ridiculous. How had it come to this? My confidence, my careful planning, all of it had crumbled in the face of something so small. I wasn't surprised when there was another knock on the door. The timing and the scent gave her away before the door even opened. "Enter," I said without emotion, already knowing what was coming. Caroline stepped in carefully. Her demeanor had changed, the quiet confidence she always carried seemed dimmed. She paused near the door, hesitating for the first time in a long time. "I wanted to check on you," she said softly, her words tentative. "You left so suddenly earlier. I was worried." I gestured toward a chair, but didn't offer her the warmth she might have been seeking. "I'm fine, Caroline. Just busy." She lingered by the door for a moment longer before sitting. "If something's wrong, you know you can tell me," she added, searching for an opening in the walls I was so clearly keeping up. I sighed, leaning back in my chair. "It's nothing, Caroline. The pack's demands are constant. You know how it is." Her lips twitched, forming a faint smile. "Well, I hope I'm not overstepping. I just thought—" "Phone calls work best in the future if it's something minor," I interrupted, my tone brisk but not cruel. Something flickered across her face, hurt disappointment, but she quickly masked it. She clasped her hands in her lap, trying to steady a shaky facade. "Have I become a bother to you, Aaron?" she asked quietly, her voice dipping just enough to feel genuine. Her question pierced through me in ways I didn't anticipate. Memories surfaced unbidden, of the day I had nearly lost my life to a rival pack and of Caroline standing there as my supposed savior. Logan growled lightly, reminding me of the debt that still chained me to her, no matter how far I tried to distance myself emotionally. "No, Caroline," I said, my voice softening just enough to convey that truth. "You saved me once. That will always matter." "Then why does it feel like you're constantly pulling away?" she pressed, her eyes searching mine for answers. I ran a hand through my hair, the weight of everything wearing on me. "You're not a bother," I repeated firmly. "You'll always have access to me, Caroline. That won't change." Her guarded expression flickered before she finally allowed relief to cross her face. She stood abruptly and crossed the room quickly, throwing her arms around me before I had time to react. "Thank you," she whispered against my shoulder. "You don't know how much that means to me." My hands hovered briefly before lightly patting her back in a gesture of distant affection. As she pulled away, something unspoken lingered in her eyes. I straightened, maintaining a composed distance as I said, "I owe you my life, Caroline. Any request within my power as Alpha is yours." Chapter 46. Pack Politics. I stood across from Aaron in his office, the weight of the conversation pressing on my chest. His focus remained on the documents in front of him, each stroke of his pen precise and deliberate. The silence dragged on, so I finally spoke, keeping my tone light. "How is Elder Catherine doing? Has there been any change?" Aaron paused briefly before answering, his eyes still on the papers. "She's improving. Slightly. The healers might move the surgery up." "That's wonderful news," I said softly, but my wolf stirred uneasily. This wasn't what I wanted to hear. "I'd like to visit her. Just a quick visit to check in on her." His reply was immediate, cutting through the air like a sharp blade. "No." I blinked, my composure slipping for a moment. I hadn't expected the outright rejection. "I wouldn't stay long, I promise. Elder Catherine and I always got along. It's not about that." Aaron interrupted, his tone firm. "She needs rest. Too many visitors could strain her recovery." I bit back the wave of frustration threatening to rise. "Of course, you're right," I murmured, a tight smile on my lips. But inside, my wolf bristled. Rest or no rest, Elder Catherine always welcomed Freya. The old she-wolf never seemed to find Freya's company straining. "She must be so proud of everything Freya's done her," I added, keeping my voice as neutral as possible. Aaron gave a non-committal grunt, brushing the topic aside, and returned to his work. My fingers clenched the strap of my bag tightly. Soon enough, Freya would be gone, and Aaron would see the truth. I would take my rightful place by his side. Patience, I reminded myself. Not much longer now. The stack of reports and correspondence seemed never-ending. The swirling ache in my temples made it clear my short leave from my duties had left the Pack's diplomatic affairs in chaos. Each letter I read revealed mistakes. The Southern Pack's territory proposal had been mishandled entirely, their response now bordering on hostile. As I rewrote yet another letter to diffuse tension, I sighed. It was going to take days to clean this up. A soft knock interrupted my train of thought. Sarah Cooper entered cautiously, holding a steaming cup in her hands. "Luna, your tea," she said, her voice nervous but warm. As soon as the bitter herbal scent hit my nose, I forced a polite smile. "Thank you, Sarah, but from now on, let's keep it simple. Plain water will be fine." Her brow furrowed, and for a moment an unspoken question lingered in her expression. She hesitated, but nodded quickly. "Of course, Luna. Water. I'll bring some right away." As she left, I sank back into my chair, rubbing the bridge of my nose. The faint sound of scratched paper and muffled voices filled the room outside my office, but it all blurred together. My hand unconsciously rested on my stomach. The growing cub within me seemed to radiate warmth, a constant reminder of what I had to protect. Water was safest. No unexpected ingredients, no unnecessary risks. I let my head rest against the chair momentarily, eyes closed, hoping to block out the chaos for just a second. But the familiar thread of Aaron's voice cut through the stillness like a wire through fog. "Freya." Instinctively, I tensed. Even through the mate bond, his voice carried weight. "What is it?" "Lunch," he replied curtly. His tone had no warmth, but it wasn't cold either. "Join me." "Use the phone for pack business." I snapped back, my frustration leaking into the bond. "I'm busy." Before he could respond, my phone rang. I glanced at the screen. Caroline, of course. "Hello, Luna Freya?" Her tone bubbled with forced sweetness, a syrupy attempt at friendliness. "I'm preparing lunch for everyone. Why don't you join us?" The knot of annoyance in my chest tightened. I kept my voice flat. "No, thank you." Without another word, I ended the call, and with it, any lingering connection to Aaron over the mate bond. My wolf Bella growled, frustration rippling through her as the rejection of both invitation and mate bond left me seething. I needed fresh air, Sarah had gathered her things to leave, lunchbox in hand. Before she could slip out, I called to her. "Sarah," I said, "wait." She paused. "Yes, Luna, I'll join you," I said simply, reaching for my jacket. Her face brightened with surprise. "Oh, really? I mean, of course. That's wonderful, Luna." Her enthusiasm softened my frayed nerves. Still, my thoughts stayed focused on preparation. Sarah's role would expand. There was no point putting it off. "Sarah, after lunch, I'll have additional assignments for you." Her brow pinched together, worry momentarily clouding her expression. "Luna, I'm so sorry about the extra work recently." "It's fine, Sarah," I said, cutting her off gently but firmly. "You'll need experience with this workload. We'll increase your responsibilities." She nodded quickly, though her body radiated tension. The dining area buzzed with activity. Conversations grew louder and more animated closer to the food counters. As soon as we stepped in, the tone shifted. Whispers rippled like waves. Sarah tensed, but stayed close to me. I was used to this. It didn't take an enhanced wolf's hearing to catch their words. "Look who's trying to act all approachable," someone muttered, too loudly to be accidental. "She has to eat here now," another sniggered. "Bet the Alpha doesn't save a seat for her anymore." I kept my expression neutral, but Bella whined inside me. We filled our plates in silence. Sarah's hands trembled faintly as she reached for silverware. When we sat down, the whispers turned into outright conversation. "Caroline would make such a better Luna," a younger wolf said boldly, confident I wouldn't react. "She's beautiful and comes from a proper pack," another chimed in. "And didn't she save the Alpha's life? That's loyalty." "Must be embarrassing for Freya," a sneering voice added. "Depending on Aaron all this time with nothing to show for it." Sarah's entire body stiffened. Her wolf energy bristled so visibly that even distant pack members took notice. I felt her anger bubbling, on the verge of boiling over. She shoved her chair back abruptly, the scrape of metal on tile silencing most of the chatter. Several pack members turned to watch. "That's enough," she shouted, her voice trembling with fury. Her wolf eyes flashed as she glared at the gossipers. For a moment, I let her stand there, my own wolf quietly observing the pack dynamics. But it was too soon for her to act this way, too soon for her to display such raw emotion in front of others. "Sarah," I said, my voice low but authoritative, the kind of tone that made even defiant wolves pause. "Sit down." Her head whipped toward me, disbelief flashing in her eyes. "But Luna, there—" "I said sit down," I repeated, softer but no less firm. She hesitated but obeyed. Shoulders trembling, she lowered herself back into her seat. Her protective instincts were admirable, but outbursts wouldn't serve her in the long run. The whispers in the dining hall didn't stop, though they quieted slightly under my cold but unwavering gaze. I didn't look around to meet their eyes. I didn't need to. Even lower-ranking wolves sensed what quiet strength meant. "You shouldn't let them talk about you like that," Sarah hissed under her breath, still fuming. This time, I allowed a small smile to tug at the corners of my lips. "They're not wrong about everything," I murmured. Sarah looked like she might argue but held her tongue. Instead, she stabbed at her food silently while her anger simmered below the surface. Chapter 47, Pack Politics and Pride. The whispers buzzed like a swarm of bees. It was impossible to not hear them, even if I wasn't a wolf with enhanced senses. Their words carried like arrows, hitting their mark no matter how much I tried to block them out. "Does she think eating down here makes her look humble?" Jennifer Wilson, one of the junior wolves, said with a smirk to her companion, Mark Thompson. "Looks more like she's avoiding the Alpha's table." Mark added, his voice loud enough for anyone in the room to hear. "Probably doesn't have a choice since Caroline's practically taken her spot." Jennifer leaned closer to him, but her words came out clear as day. "Caroline is the real deal, complete package. Beautiful, strong bloodlines, and she saved his life." "What has Freya done?" Mark shrugged. "Survived, I guess. Got lucky in an arranged mating, if you can call luck being cast aside like this." I chewed deliberately on my salad, refusing to let my expression falter. I wouldn't give them the satisfaction of seeing me react. Besides, what point would there be? Everything they were saying, about Caroline, about me, wasn't entirely wrong. My position here was temporary, hanging by a thread that frayed more with each passing day. But Sarah's anger beside me was a storm brewing. Her wolf bristled so visibly it almost seemed to radiate off her. The fork in her hands bent slightly under the pressure of her grip. Her amber eyes gleamed as she shot a glare toward the gossipers. "This is unacceptable," she hissed. "Do they even know who they're talking about? How dare they question your contributions?" "Let it go, Sarah," I interjected, keeping my tone calm, even as those words pierced deeper than I wanted to admit. "But, Luna—" "Sarah," I said more firmly, shifting my gaze to hers, "this doesn't deserve your energy. Focus on your duties." Her hands trembled with frustration, knuckles white as she clenched them. "After everything you've done for them, and for Aaron's pack, they have no right." I reached across to place my hand gently over hers. I needed her loyalty, yes, but now was not the time to let emotions cloud either of our judgments. "Protecting the pack doesn't mean responding to every insult," I said softly but with conviction. "It means maintaining dignity, always." I saw conflict flash in her eyes. Her wolf wanted to fight, but my words held her back, just barely. Her shoulders sagged slightly as she quieted, though her anger hadn't diminished. "Remember your position," I reminded her gently. "As Luna's assistant, wolves will always watch what you do. Never let them see you lose control." Her nostrils flared briefly before she gave a tight nod. She sat back, though her posture remained stiff with tension. In contrast, I took another bite of my salad, as if everything happening around us was of no consequence. It was a practiced calm, a mask I'd worn countless times over the years. Even as my wolf Bella whimpered inside, hurt by the cruel words echoing around us, I held firm. I had no choice. Soon, this wouldn't matter anymore. Sarah leaned closer to me, her voice low. If Caroline were sitting here right now, they'd probably worship the ground she walked on. And she wasn't wrong about that either. My eyes flicked around the room briefly. More gossip, more whispers. They had no problem being loud where they thought I couldn't or wouldn't respond. "I heard Caroline brought lunch to the Alpha today," one voice said with awe. "That's so sweet of her," another added. "Honestly, it won't be long before she officially takes over as Luna." "The pack deserves her," someone else chimed in. "She's what a proper Luna looks like." I didn't need to hear more. "Let's go," I said abruptly, standing to leave. "The work in my office won't finish itself." Sarah followed me with hesitation, her pace slightly behind mine so as not to betray the conflict still coursing through her. For a moment, almost envied how freely she showed her emotions. I didn't have that luxury anymore. Back in the Luna's office, I pulled open the folders stacked on my desk, handing a third of them to Sarah. She blinked down at the heavy stack of documents, overwhelmed, her reaction expected. "Luna, this is a lot," she said hesitantly. "It's necessary," I said plainly, sitting down across from her. "You need to learn, and you need to learn quickly." Her brow furrowed as she looked at the first report. "You're preparing me for something, aren't you?" I didn't answer the question directly. Instead, I turned my attention back to an unfinished draft for a pact negotiation. "Start with this. Draft a response firm enough to establish boundaries but respectful enough to maintain relations." Yes, Luna." Sarah responded, swallowing visibly as she picked up the pen. Her initial hesitation was apparent. She reviewed the report with wide eyes, clearly nervous about messing up. But then I saw her expression shift slightly, determination beginning to set in. Good. That was exactly what I needed from her. "You can do this, Sarah," I said firmly. "You have to. This pack will need you when I'm gone." She froze at my words. "Gone?" I glanced up at her, my expression unchanging. "Focus on the work." Her grip tightened on the pen, but she obeyed. She was starting to piece it together. I knew. And she was smart enough not to press the issue right now. As Sarah worked, I watched her closely, noting the way she would pause and carefully reread her sentences. Her hands trembled slightly when she wrote, but it wasn't from fear. It was from the weight of responsibility she suddenly realized was being thrust upon her. There was a knock. The distinct scent of Caroline reached me before Sarah could even react. Her wolf immediately bristled. She stood up faster than she needed to, posture rigid. "I'll tell her you're busy." "No," I said, closing my folder. "Let her in." Caroline strode in, every step measured, her designer outfit impeccable. She carried a lunchbox, beautifully wrapped with yellow ribbon, likely worth more than an average wolf's weekly salary. "I thought you might be hungry after a long morning," she said warmly, holding out the lunchbox. Sarah's lip curled with barely concealed disdain. "The Luna has already eaten." "Thank you, Caroline," I said before Sarah could go further. "But as Sarah said, I've already had lunch." Caroline's smile slipped only slightly, so brief most wolves wouldn't have noticed it, but I did. "What's wrong with a little extra?" Her tone remained light. "You've been working so much lately. Even Aaron said—" I cut her off. "Aaron seems to do a lot of talking about me. Maybe you should focus on keeping him away from me instead." Her smile vanished entirely this time. Her wolf stirred behind her eyes, showing flickers of warning. "I can't control where Aaron chooses to go," she said finally, her patience thinning. "He's the alpha of this territory. Or have you forgotten?" "Then perhaps," I said slowly, letting the sarcasm seep into my voice, "you should focus on keeping him away from pack headquarters instead." Her blue eyes flared with indignation, but she quickly regained control of herself, forcing her features back into that practiced calm. Chapter 48, A Bitter Meal and a Stern Lesson. Caroline held out the elegantly wrapped lunchbox again, her smile unwavering. The yellow ribbon caught the light, almost as bright as her determined expression. "You really should eat," she said, her tone laced with concern that felt too calculated to be genuine. "These are specially prepared, balanced meals, good for your condition." Her eyes flicked briefly but pointedly toward my stomach. Bella, my wolf, growled softly within me, unsettled by her behavior. I tensed, inhaling sharply through my nose. "I've already eaten," I replied, keeping my tone flat but firm. "And, as I said earlier, unnecessary gestures won't change things, Caroline." For a split second, the corners of her mouth tugged downward. The cuck was barely noticeable before her mask of politeness returned, but I saw it. "Freya," she began, softening her voice even more, as though I were being unreasonable. "Aaron would be upset if you weren't taking care of yourself. I know how busy you've been, but this is important." I tilted my head, studying her carefully. I saw desperation in her wolf's energy and an uncomfortable determination she was trying hard to disguise as affection. "It's not Aaron's health you're worried about, is it?" I said quietly, my words cutting into the air between us like a blade. "Let me guess. This meal, this little act of care, it's all a show for him. You're hoping he'll notice your effort." Her composure wavered slightly. Her hand gripped the handle of the lunchbox tighter. "That's not fair," she retorted, her voice shaking just enough for me to catch it. "But it's true," I replied without hesitation. I leaned back in my chair, my eyes not leaving hers. "You don't do anything without expecting something in return, Caroline. Is it attention you're after? Reassurance? Or perhaps gratitude for saving him years ago?" Her face reddened visibly. Anger flashed in her eyes for the briefest moment before she forced her lips into another tight, practiced smile. "I brought this as a gesture of kindness," she said, her voice low, steady, and unnervingly calm. "For you. Why must you twist it into something ugly?" I met her words with silence, watching her squirm under the weight of my unwavering stare. She laughed softly, bitterly, shaking her head. "You've always been so difficult, Freya. Why can't you just see that I'm trying to help, like—" She hesitated for barely a heartbeat. "Like a sister would." "A sister," I echoed quietly, the disbelief evident in my tone. I let out a hollow laugh, one that carried no humor. "Is that what we're pretending to be now? Sisters?" Her jaw clenched. For a split second, her wolf's frustration rippled through her composed facade, making her reaction more genuine than I expected. "You don't have to make this so complicated," she muttered, her voice still lined with a brittle insistence. "I'm not," I said simply, standing and walking around my desk until I was face to face with her. "I see your intentions clearly, even when you try so hard to hide them. The problem is you don't like when wolves call you out for what you are." Caroline's breath hitched, and I smiled faintly, taking satisfaction in her discomfort as I watched her internal struggle play out in her expression. "Fine," she said finally, each word laced with a bitterness she couldn't fully suppress. She clutched the rejected lunchbox close to her chest, her movement stiff with anger. "I won't bother you again." Barely waiting for my response, she spun on her heel, the sharp click of her shoes echoing loudly in the silence. She slammed the door harder than necessary as she left, her polished image shattered. I exhaled deeply, releasing the tension in my shoulders. "Luna," Sarah nearly stumbled into the room, her eyes wide with concern. Her protective instincts were shining brighter than ever now, and her sharp ears must have picked up every word exchanged between Caroline and me. "That woman," Sarah hissed, pacing angrily in front of my desk. She didn't even try to hide her wolf's irritation. "What does she think she's doing? Walking in here like she owns the place, pretending to care about you? She has no right." "Sarah," I started, but she continued, her anger firing so fast I could barely stop it. "She disgusts me." Sarah's fists clenched tightly at her sides. "She keeps showing up, acting so sweet and generous when we all know what she's after." "Stop, Sarah," I said louder this time, my voice hard enough to finally get her attention. Her mouth shut, but her wolf eyes stared back at me, still simmering with frustration. "But Luna, I need to say." "You need to remember your place," I interrupted sharply, stepping to stand directly in front of her. Sarah flinched slightly, but didn't back away. "Do you have any idea what you're doing?" I snapped, my tone cold. My words were deliberate and firm, meant to sink in like teeth. "Caroline isn't just another wolf you can badmouth without consequence." "I know." "No, you don't," I bit back before she could finish. The frustration in my chest boiled over. "Did you forget who she is? She's from the Redwood Pack. She's Aaron's future. She will replace me as his mate. And you?" I let my eyes rake over her trembling figure. "You're a junior assistant, a lower-rank wolf openly disrespecting someone far above you in status." Her wolf whimpered audibly this time, their energy deflating at my scolding. Tears welled in her eyes, pooling visibly at the bottom of her lashes. "I was only trying to protect you," she whispered shakily, her voice breaking. "And I don't need your protection," I said harshly. "What I need is for you to stay in line. Do you understand?" The tears spilled over, rolling silently down her flushed cheeks. She nodded, her lips trembling as she struggled against the overwhelming emotion radiating through her. "Get out," I finished coldly, "and think before you act again." She turned almost immediately, her sobs echoing faintly in the hall as she fled the room. The heaviness settled in the air immediately after her departure, and I collapsed silently into my chair. Bella whimpered quietly in my mind, unsure if she felt more guilt for Sarah's departure or disgust over Caroline's actions. "Harsh," a familiar voice chimed in from the doorway. I turned to see Daniel Rivers leaning against the frame, his arms crossed lazily over his chest. His easy posture didn't match the sharpness in his tone. "I don't remember you being so cruel before," he added, stepping inside and shutting the door behind him. "She needed to hear it," I said defensively, not bothering to mask the edge in my voice. "Did she?" he countered. He tilted his head slightly, his sharp brown eyes narrowing thoughtfully. "Or did you just need someone else to feel as miserable as you do right now?" I shot him a glare, but he didn't flinch. He never did. Unlike Sarah, Daniel had enough dominance and rank to stand toe-to-toe with me when needed. "The pack will talk," he added, making his way toward the chairs opposite my desk. He dropped into one with exaggerated ease, like he had all the time in the world. "They'll say you've changed." I sighed heavily, forcing myself to look away from his knowing expression. "It doesn't matter what they say. I won't be here much longer anyway," I replied bluntly. His brow lifted slightly at that. "So it's true? You're leaving after the mate bond severance?" "Yes." I didn't elaborate further. Daniel watched me closely, his usual teasing demeanor dimming for once. He tapped his fingers rhythmically on the armrest of his chair, the seconds stretching between us. "Doesn't that seem a bit defeatist?" he asked suddenly. I blinked at him. "Defeatist?" "Yeah," he said, leaning forward slightly. "It's the kind of word I wouldn't have used to describe you before you and Aaron were mated." My chest tightened at his observation. "So," he continued, his voice softer now, "why are you just letting Caroline win? Why give her the satisfaction of seeing you walk away so easily?" His words struck a nerve deeper than I expected. I stiffened, my hands curling into fists in my lap. "It's not about her," I said quietly, but Daniel wasn't buying it. "It's always about her," he countered, "and Aaron, and this pack." I didn't respond, couldn't respond. I stared blankly at the desk in front of me, my mind racing with thoughts I didn't want to confront. "You've changed, Freya," Daniel said finally. His tone wasn't accusing, but it wasn't soft either. "You're not the strong alpha female I remember from before. You're something else now, and I don't think that's a good thing." Chapter 49. Territorial Instincts. The air in the hallway of Northern Ridge Pack headquarters buzzed faintly with activity. Wolves passed by, heads low in respect as they acknowledged Aaron walking at my side. His presence alone was enough to command unwavering attention. Then I saw him. Daniel Rivers. He exited Freya's office with a casual air, holding himself effortlessly as if he belonged there. His ease made my wolf stir with something sharp and opportunistic. Aaron stiffened instantly, the tension rolling off him in waves. His golden eyes narrowed on Daniel like a predator zeroing in on its prey. I seized the moment. "Oh, isn't that Daniel?" I remarked lightly, as though the observation had just entered my mind. My voice was calm, carefully casual. Aaron's reaction? Immediate. His posture grew rigid, his lips pressed into a thin line, his jaw working as if to suppress something primal. "He seems quite close to Freya these days," I added, my tone almost thoughtful. Aaron didn't respond, but the flash of gold in his wolf eyes spoke volumes. Pack members around us quickened their steps, sensing the growing storm in their alpha. "I noticed them having lunch together recently," I continued, feigning ignorance of Aaron's growing agitation. My gaze drifted deliberately toward Daniel, who had disappeared down another corridor. "They seemed rather comfortable with each other," I added, a hint of suggestion in my voice. Aaron's fists clenched at his sides. I could almost hear the tension in his restrained breathing. He was fighting his instincts, barely keeping Logan, his wolf, in check. But I wasn't done. "You know," I said, slightly lowering my voice as though I was divulging a secret, "when the Snowfang Pack lost their territory, everyone abandoned her. Everyone. Except for him." Aaron's rigid frame made a subtle movement, a shift in his stance that sent a shiver through me. His golden eyes burned cold, his alpha presence coiling tightly like a spring ready to release. "Even after all these years," I continued delicately, "he followed her to Northern Ridge Pack and still remains close, loyal, I suppose." Aaron's silence was deafening. My wolf pushed me to take the final step. "I thought you might already know," I said softly, letting my words linger. "Her father even once considered Daniel as a potential mate for her before your arrangement. Isn't that interesting?" For years it was just idle pack gossip, but I let the sentence trail off. Aaron's reaction was immediate. His lips pulled back in a near snarl, a low rumble catching in his throat. Logan's intense aggression bled into his alpha presence, and for a moment I questioned if I had gone too far. He didn't outwardly snap, of course. He was Aaron Steele, always composed. But I could see the storm raging beneath that carefully controlled exterior. His wolf wanted to lash out, and yet, beneath his anger, a dangerous realization settled over me. Aaron's reaction was too intense, too personal. The unease crept in quickly, my wolf prompting me to reconsider this approach. What if I had bitten off more than I could chew this time? I swallowed hard and changed my expression into something softer, more accommodating. "But it's all ancient history now," I added lightly, forcing a soft smile. "Just baseless rumors from a time long gone." Aaron exhaled sharply through his nose, his golden eyes still fixed on the empty hallway Daniel had vanished into. He didn't respond directly, but I didn't need him to. I had succeeded at driving that wedge deeper, at least. Yet now, my wolf pressed warning thoughts into my mind. The intensity of his reaction meant one thing: I needed to accelerate my plans. If Aaron's territorial instincts became further entangled with Freya's situation, everything I'd worked for could spiral out of my grasp. I couldn't afford that. The soft hum of the desk lamp cast a gentle glow across the neatly arranged documents. The room was quiet, except for Sarah's voice coming softly through my phone earpiece. "About this section," Sarah began, her hesitation evident. "I'm not sure if the phrasing about hunting rights works here. Should I revise it again?" "Yes," I answered, my tone calm but firm. "Make sure it's clear and fair but leaves no room for manipulation. Send me the edits when you're done." I glanced toward the clock but didn't let the late hour deter me. There was still so much to do, and Sarah needed this training. "Got it, Luna. I'll..." The air shifted. A presence, powerful and unmistakable, filled the room. I turned to see Aaron standing just inside the doorway. His jet-black hair was damp and clung slightly to his forehead. A towel hung low around his waist, and his broad chest glistened faintly from the shower. For a moment I froze, my heart betraying me with an unexpected skip. Bella stirred uneasily, her energy both curious and wary. But Aaron's expression wasn't one of warmth or ease. His golden eyes, sharp and assessing, made the air feel heavier. "Can't these pack matters wait until tomorrow?" His voice was laced with irritation, his alpha authority clear in every word. I ended the call with Sarah, removing the earpiece and turning back to my documents. "There's too much to handle during office hours," I replied, refusing to meet his gaze. "You're working too late," he stated bluntly. "And yet the workload doesn't lessen," I countered, keeping my voice neutral despite my rising frustration. His silence spoke volumes. The weight of his wolf's displeasure hung between us, coiling tightly around the space. "I'll move to the study?" I said finally, gathering my papers. "If you need rest, I'll leave you to it." I made my way toward the door, but I didn't make it far. "Isn't your time at pack headquarters enough to handle your duties?" His voice stopped me cold. I turned slowly, arms clutching the scattered documents against my chest. Beneath his calm tone there was something sharp, something accusatory. "What do you mean by that?" I asked evenly. Bella stirred warily in my thoughts, sensing the brewing tension. Aaron's lips quirked, but there was no humor behind it, only something bitter. "Or perhaps there are other, more important matters keeping you busy." I blinked, my frustration mounting. "What are you implying? That I'm neglecting my responsibilities?" "Isn't that the case?" He shot back, his golden eyes narrowing. "If you were balanced in your duties, why bring your work home at all?" The words stung despite their absurdity. "Not talking anymore?" he continued, his voice taunting. "What's wrong? Did you have a pleasant chat with your dear pack brother Daniel?" I froze. So that's what this was about. His sudden hostility, his clipped words, it all stemmed from his oversized alpha pride. "Enough," I sighed, turning toward the hallway. I wasn't going to engage further in whatever irrational narrative he'd built in his mind. But before I could take another step, his hand shot out, gripping my wrist with a force I couldn't ignore. "Aaron," I warned, twisting in his hold, "let me go." His expression darkened, Logan's presence flickering visibly in the gold of his eyes. Then, without warning, he pulled me closer. In one seamless motion, I found myself off my feet, thrown onto our bed with a forceful ease. "Aaron!" I exclaimed, the documents scattering as I landed on the mattress. He followed immediately, pinning me in place before I could react. "What are you doing?" I struggled, but his weight and wolf strength kept me firmly beneath him. His hands caught my wrists, holding them above my head. His knee pressed down on my legs, ensuring I couldn't move. "If you think you can use Daniel to toy with me," he began, his voice dark and stormy. "Toy with you?" I cut him off, rage building inside me. "Are you even listening to yourself?" His grip tightened as he glared down at me. Bella growled fiercely within me, but I pushed her instincts back. "You're acting ridiculous," I spat. My body moved instinctively, and before I could reconsider the consequences, I bit down, hard, on his forearm. His sharp intake of breath was the only indication of pain. "Let go," he commanded through gritted teeth. "No," I answered defiantly, my voice muffled against his skin. "Snow Princess," he barked, his frustrated voice tinged with something nostalgic. "Let go now." The nickname from our childhood caught me off guard just long enough for his grip to shift. He released my wrists, grabbing my chin instead and forcing me to meet his gaze. His blood coated my lips, staining them crimson. He glanced briefly at the bite mark I'd left on his arm before sneering. "You bit me this hard, Snow Princess?" he mocked. "Have you forgotten how pack hierarchy works?" "If you respect pack hierarchy," I shot back coldly, "then let me go." For a split second, his wolf eyes flickered with something unreadable, something between anger and disbelief. The nickname fell heavily between us, stirring old memories of when things were simpler. Back then, Snow Princess had been a mere taunt, a teasing jab at my fiery nature. But now, with his face hovering inches from mine, the weight of the name carried something far more complicated. I refused to let it faze me. "And what if I did talk to Daniel?" I challenged, my voice cutting through the tension like a blade. "What business is it of yours? Are you jealous, mighty Alpha?" Aaron's golden eyes burned fiercely, locking with mine. Neither of us looked away. Chapter 50. A Broken Device and Shattered Trust. Aaron's hands gripped my wrists tightly, his golden wolf eyes glaring down at me. His voice cut through the heavy air like a blade. "I'll ask you one more time," he growled. "What's going on with you and Daniel Rivers?" I shot him a defiant look, refusing to give ground. "Nothing is going on. He's my pack brother, nothing more." Aaron's sneer deepened. His alpha energy nearly suffocated me. "A pack brother who is unusually concerned about you," he said sharply, his tone dripping with hostility. My teeth clenched at the accusation in his voice. Anger rushed through my veins, drowning out any fear of his dominating aura. "And what about Caroline? She's unusually concerned about you too. It's funny how you don't question that." The mention of Caroline landed like a direct hit. His grip slackened for a moment, surprise flashing across his face. "What does Caroline have to do with this?" he demanded, his tone colder now, eyes narrowing. I let out a bitter laugh. I couldn't hold it back anymore. "Are you serious? Maybe everything, Aaron. Have you not noticed? Do you think I don't see it? Everyone in the pack knows. They're just waiting for me to step aside so she can take her rightful place as Luna." "That's not," he began, but I cut him off. "Not what, Aaron?" I shot back, my voice rising. "Not true? Open your eyes. The entire pack is practically celebrating already. They don't want me. They want her." His jaw tightened until his teeth nearly ground together. "Is that why you're so close to Daniel? Planning on running to him next, are you?" The sharp barb hit me straight in the chest. My wolf Bella bristled at the insult, but I didn't let her rise to it. "You have no right to question who I spend time with." I spat, my voice shaking with fury. "I'm your mate," he shot back, his voice loud and firm. The words rang with possessiveness, but there was no warmth in them. "For now," I snapped, throwing the words back at him. "But we both know that's temporary, don't we?" His entire body stiffened, tension radiating from him. His wolf eyes sparked, but instead of the fiery anger I expected, a new coldness replaced it. "You admit it, then," he said, his voice quieter now, more lethal. "You're planning to leave with him." "Stop twisting my words," I yelled, trying to regain control of the conversation. "You're the one who insisted on breaking the mate bond. Did you forget that?" His fists clenched by his sides, his wolf energy flooding the room. "Because it's obvious this arrangement doesn't suit you anymore." His words struck with hot anger. "And you think it suits you?" I snapped, not backing down for even a second. "Caroline's been waiting in the wings this entire time, Aaron. She's been waiting for you, hasn't she? For us to fall apart." Aaron froze, his sharp inhale cutting through the air, his eyes, still glowing faintly gold, locked onto mine. Then, without another word, he let go of my wrists entirely and stepped back. His movements were stiff, almost robotic, as he turned and left the bed. His shoulders tensed, his broad back to me. When he looked back briefly, I saw that his wolf's controlled restraint had given way to icy resolve. The door to the bathroom slammed shut behind him, shaking the walls. I stood frozen for a moment, my chest heaving. Slowly, I looked down at my wrists, rubbing the faint reddish marks where his alpha strength had left its impression. "Bella," I muttered to my wolf, "he needs to get a grip, literally." But my attempt to lighten my own mood fell flat. Bella whimpered softly, unsettled by the clash of energies between us. I turned back toward the bed to gather the scattered papers from earlier, but my elbow bumped something off the edge of the nightstand. I winced as my laptop hit the floor with a loud "Seriously," I whispered, crouching to pick it up. The cracked screen was undeniable. Of course, this just had to happen now. Aaron exited the bathroom, fully dressed, but his expression unreadable. I didn't look up at him as I inspected the laptop. "What now?" His gruff voice cut through the tense silence. "My laptop's broken," I said shortly, biting back my frustration. "Thanks to everything tonight." His brow furrowed slightly, his tone softening by a fraction. "Let me take a look at it." I hugged the broken device closer to my chest and shook my head. "No thanks. I'll handle it." His eyes lingered on the laptop, guilt flashing briefly through his alpha mask. He stepped closer, arms crossed. "At least let me replace it. It's the least I can do." "I said I'll handle it," I repeated stubbornly. "You're being ridiculous," he said, a pang of exasperation in his voice. "Just tell me what it costs, and I'll transfer the money." My lips tightened into a thin line. I exhaled, thinking it over. With my plans to leave and needing to save for the cub, maybe accepting his help made sense. "Fine," I finally said. "Transfer me the money through the Pack Expenses app." I expected him to hesitate, but his compliance was immediate. His phone was out in seconds, and I heard the familiar notification tone. My own phone pinged a moment later. I opened the app and stared at the transaction. $5,000? I looked up at him, eyebrows raised. The laptop only costs $1,000. Take the rest as an apology, Aaron muttered, already turning away as if that settled everything. I scoffed under my breath and immediately initiated a return transfer for $4,000. When he checked his phone and saw the notification, he froze, his wolf eyes flickering toward me. Just the cost of the laptop? I said firmly. Keep your apology money. He said nothing, staring down at his phone for a tense moment. The silence stretched between us, heavy with unspoken emotions. Without another word, Aaron walked out of the room. The air he left behind seemed quieter, colder. The notification on my phone remained open, glaring back at me. $4,000. Rejected. I closed the app with a sharp swipe and stared at the empty space where Freya had been standing. My wolf Logan stirred restlessly, discontent radiating through his presence. Why did she take only what she needed? Why not accept the rest? Was she distancing herself even financially now? Was this because of Daniel Rivers? Logan growled low within me, his discontent pressing against my chest. I turned toward the bedroom door, but thought better of it. Freya's defiance wouldn't be softened tonight, not after what had just happened. Instead, I forced my frustration deep down and headed into my study. Freya's POV. The next morning, I decided to repair the laptop rather than replace it. Why spend extra when I wouldn't need it long term? My departure was coming soon. At breakfast with Sarah Cooper, I shuffled through some old notes, passing her several sheets for review. She hesitated mid-chew, staring at me as if she wanted to say something. Luna, she started, her tone uncertain. Are you planning to resign? Her question made me stop. I set down my water glass and studied her carefully. What made you think that? You've been assigning me so much of your work, she said softly, the worry obvious in her voice. It feels like you're preparing me to take over. I offered her a small, tired smile. You're a quick learner. That's not an answer, she pressed, her shoulders slumping slightly. She deserved honesty, at least now. Yes, Sarah, I am stepping down. Her fork clattered against the plate, her wolf energy bristling with sadness. Because of Aaron? Because of the mate bond severance? Among other things, I said vaguely. My hand unconsciously brushed against my stomach, where my cub rested snugly. Bella purred softly at the protective gesture. Sarah's lip trembled as tears filled her eyes. But I don't want you to go, Luna. The pack needs you. I reached out, touching her hand lightly. Remember what I told you about unnecessary conflicts? Her tears spilled freely as she nodded. Yes, but that's different. It's not about conflict. It's that the pack won't be the same without you. I squeezed her hand gently. Change is natural in pack life, Sarah. Wolves adapt. That's what we do. Her sadness lingered, but she sighed deeply, forcing herself to nod. I'll try. After breakfast, as I walked back to headquarters, something caught my eye in the lobby. The large digital calendar displayed a reminder. Elder Catherine's surgery, 6 days remaining. My hand drifted to my stomach once again, feeling the secret life growing inside me. In 6 days, everything would change. Bella pressed closer to our shared secret, curling protectively. Together, we drew quiet strength from the knowledge that soon we would leave this behind. Chapter 51, Unexpected Allies. The ambient light seeped through the large window of my office, casting dim shadow across the piles of documents stacked haphazardly on my desk. My pen hovered over the paper as my focus flickered, workload stretching endlessly. Stabella, my wolf, remained surprisingly quiet and compliant. Then the door creaked open, and an overwhelmingly familiar floral fragrance filtered in, making Bella stir uneasily. I knew the scent too well by now. Caroline Redwood. My eyes stayed glued to the documents, pretending not to notice her presence. Maybe, just maybe, she'd drop whatever excuse she had for coming and leave on her own. Good morning, Luna Freya. Her high-pitched voice pierced through the silence like an overly sweet melody grating on sensitive ears. I exhaled steadily, forcing patience to the surface. With deliberate movements, I capped my pen and finally glanced up. There she was, standing smugly in her designer outfit, sharp heels clacking softly against the hardwood floor as she approached my desk. She carried another carefully packaged container, this one tied off with a bright red ribbon. "Caroline," I greeted neutrally. She set the container down on the corner of my desk without waiting for permission. Her eyes gleamed with faux warmth. "Today I brought venison soup," she announced brightly, her tone practically dripping with satisfaction. "It's made with healing herbs, exceptional for recovery, perfect for someone who's been unwell." Unwell? That was her new angle today? My brow quirked ever so slightly. "Really?" I said, my voice calm but edged with subtle disbelief. "Yes. I heard you weren't feeling your best lately," she continued, her heels clicking softly as she paced toward the already set chair across me. Without waiting to be invited, she sat down delicately, crossing her legs. "It's important to take care of our Luna." Her words lingered in the air, and for a moment Bella growled faintly within me. I let the silence stretch, watching her, trying to understand why she'd go to such ridiculous lengths. Her smile faltered slightly at my lack of response, but she quickly recovered. "The herbs I used are very rare. They boost energy, clear the mind, and help the body heal faster. I'm sure you'll find it refreshing." "This whole display, for whom? You want me to eat this here?" I asked plainly, leaning back into my chair. Caroline tilted her head, sporting an air of innocent confusion. "I thought it would be nice for you to enjoy a hot meal between all your responsibilities. Besides, preparing food for others, it brings me joy. Watching their faces, feeling that bond. One day you'll understand, especially if—" Her voice paused, her gaze briefly flicking toward my stomach before she smiled again. "When you find someone who truly reciprocates your wolf's bond." The meaning behind her words wasn't subtle. Bella snarled under my composed exterior, a sharp pang shooting through me. But I kept my expression cool. "Thank you for the effort, but there's no need," I said with a faint smile, meeting her eyes directly. "Still, I wish you well in experiencing that understanding yourself someday." Her lips tightened, the mask of charm she wore faltering briefly. I could smell the faint irritation radiating from her, the sourness mixing faintly with her lingering floral scent. Before either of us could continue this unspoken sparring, a soft knock interrupted the tension. "Luna?" Sarah Cooper's voice came through as she peeked her head inside, hesitating slightly at the sight of Caroline already seated there. "James Morrison would like to speak with you. Should I send him in?" I gave her a nod. James entered, his tall and broad frame radiating beta authority. His sharp brown eyes flicked between me and Caroline, brightening unexpectedly when he saw her. "Miss Redwood," he greeted warmly, surprising me with the genuine enthusiasm in his tone. "What a delightful surprise." Delightful. That was new. Caroline's wolf energy rippled with pleasure, and her smile returned in full force. "James," she replied, standing gracefully. "Always a pleasure to see you." Her voice had taken on that airy tone she used when trying to charm someone. I observed the interaction silently, noting how Caroline leaned just slightly forward, her hands curling delicately near her sides. I narrowed my eyes slightly. Beta wolves were rarely so openly welcoming, unless there was a clear motive. Trust didn't come so easily at this rank. "Is that more of your wonderful cooking, Miss Redwood?" Morrison gestured toward the container she'd placed on my desk. "For Luna Freya, I assume?" She nodded and flashed a saccharine smile, as though her place at the top of the pack hierarchy had already been solidified. I said nothing, merely watching as Morrison turned to me. "Will you eat any of it, Luna?" "No, thank you," I declined with the faintest twist of my lips. Then, with permission, Morrison's gaze moved back to Caroline. "Would it be all right if I took it instead? Your cooking was such a hit with the staff yesterday." The faintest twitch crossed Caroline's face, but she recovered quickly, nodding graciously. "Good, excellent." Morrison clasped his hands together. Then, his expression became more pointed, clearly a calculated move. "Miss Redwood, since your meals have been so well received, might I trouble you with a request?" Caroline raised a suspicious brow, but her smile stayed intact. "What is it?" "Could you perhaps bring food daily for the lower-ranking staff in the pack? Of course, you'd be compensated properly for such a generous contribution." There was silence. My wolf stirred uneasily. Bella didn't trust this sudden exchange any more than I did. Morrison's words weren't random. His tone wasn't careless. There was intent loaded in every syllable. Caroline's mask faltered under the weight of those words. She blinked once, twice, before slowly tilting her head. "You'd like me to cook for the staff?" she repeated as though she hadn't heard correctly the first time. "Exactly. Your food is highly appreciated, after all. I believe the pack staff would say the same," Morrison answered, all innocence. Something bitter churned in Caroline's wolf energy. Bella smirked in the back of my mind, but I kept my face neutral, curious to see how she'd handle this. Caroline, although clearly insulted, smoothed her expression quickly. The smile she gave was tight, forced, but she nodded. "I'll speak to Aaron about it," she said through gritted teeth. "We'll see if it's feasible." It was as polite a response as she could muster, but I could tell her wolf seethed beneath the surface. Seconds later, she plastered on a wider smile. That's offering a nod to both me and Morrison. Well then, I should take my leave. Enjoy the meal. Her departure was quick, heels clicking sharply against the floor as she exited. As the door shut behind her, Morrison's pleasant demeanor dropped. His nose wrinkled as he picked up the container and set it aside, his disgust plain. "Store-bought ingredients," he muttered under his breath. "No fresh proteins, no proper hunting preparation, and she thinks she can call that cooking?" I stared at him, completely at a loss for words. "What are you doing?" "Protecting you," he said simply, turning to look at me with unwavering sincerity. "Morrison," I started, my voice heavy with warning. "This is dangerous. You're playing a dangerous game. Aaron won't do anything about it." Morrison cut me off, his calm but firm tone surprising me. I didn't lift a paw out of rank. I simply made a request to someone generous enough to volunteer. I opened my mouth to protest, but he held up a hand to stop me. "Luna, listen to me carefully," he said, his eyes locking with mine. "You're the true Luna of this pack. Freya Snow. Not Caroline Redwood, not anyone else the pack wants to replace you with. You." I swallowed thickly as his words settled over me like a heavy coat. "The pack needs you," he finished, his voice softer but no less resolute. I looked down briefly, the weight of his loyalty pressing hard against the guilt in my chest. "You don't understand. It's not simple," I whispered, my voice barely carrying across the room. "I understand enough," Morrison replied with a sharpness I wasn't expecting. "And I know giving up is not in the Freya Snow I grew up hearing about." I stayed silent, unsure how to argue back. His statement hung in the air. With a respectful nod, Morrison excused himself. But his parting words stayed lodged in my mind long after he'd left. "Do you know your place, Luna?" Even as Bella whimpered softly in the corners of my consciousness, I couldn't help but wonder if Morrison was right. Chapter 52, Pride and Promises. I left Freya's office with my hands balled into trembling fists. My nails dug painfully into my palms, but the sting was nothing compared to the humiliation burning inside me. How dare she? How dare Freya play this game of calm superiority when her position was crumbling beneath her? The hallway buzzed with activity, but I didn't care. Pack members paused as I strode past, their gazes quickly dropping to the floor under my glare. My wolf bristled within me, fueling my every step with simmering rage. When I reached Aaron's office, I barely paused before pushing the door open. I needed him to understand what had just happened. He needed to know what Freya was doing, how she mocked me, how she refused to step aside with dignity. "Aaron," I called, stepping into the room. He was sitting there behind his massive desk, golden eyes focused on the far wall as though lost in a distant thought. His elbows rested on the desk, fingers loosely steepled together. "Aaron," I said again, a little louder this time. "Nothing." He didn't so much as glance in my direction. "Aaron!" My voice cracked, sharper than I intended. He blinked, finally turning his attention to me. Confusion flickered across his face before recognition settled in. "Caroline," he said slowly, as though just realizing I was there. "I need to speak with you," I snapped, trying to keep my frustration in check. His brow furrowed as he leaned back slightly, giving me his full attention now. "What is it?" I hesitated for a moment, trying to rein in the trembling anger in my chest. "It's Freya," I began, keeping my voice as calm as I could. "I went to her office today." Aaron tilted his head slightly, watching me closely now. His golden eyes were unreadable. "I brought her some food," I continued, "something special I made myself. I'm doing everything I can to bridge the gap, to make this easier for her, for you, for the pack." "And?" His tone was flat, almost distant. "And she refused it. I said sharply, the hurt in my voice unmasked now. She didn't even look at it, didn't look at me, as if I were invisible. Aaron shifted slightly, his lips pressed into a thin line. Did she say why? No, I snapped, my wolf growling low beneath my voice. She didn't have to. She just sat there with that same cold, uncaring look. He lowered his gaze slightly, his tone turning softer. Caroline, your food isn't the problem. I stared at him, waiting for more, waiting for him to address her disrespect, to assure me her behavior wouldn't be tolerated, but instead he seemed distracted. His eyes shifted, focusing on a spot somewhere on his desk. Aaron, I pressed, my irritation rising again. Are you even listening? This is serious. His gaze snapped back to mine, and for a brief moment I saw exhaustion in his golden eyes. I'm listening, Caroline. You said she refused your food? Did anything else happen? James Morrison took it, I added pointedly. A flicker of surprise crossed his face. Morrison? Yes. He said the pack staff wanted it. I crossed my arms, my temper flaring at his lack of reaction. Aaron, this isn't just about the food. She's disrespecting me. She's tired, Aaron interrupted, his tone firm yet distant. This has nothing to do with you, Caroline. My mouth opened to protest, but his words brought me to a halt. I didn't know how to reply to the indifference in his tone, the way his focus seemed to drift back into some private world I wasn't a part of. The silence thickened between us. My wolf restlessly paced within me as I waited for him to engage, to show some emotion, some outrage on my behalf, but it never came. Aaron, I murmured, softening my tone almost desperately now. Why won't you? But then my eyes caught something on his forearm. The faint indentations, they looked fresh, wolf bite marks. What's that on your arm? I demanded, stepping closer, my voice laced with concern and suspicion. Aaron blinked, glancing down at his forearm as though he'd forgotten the marks were even there. It's nothing, he said quickly, pulling down his sleeve to cover them. Nothing? I nearly shouted, my wolf growling deep inside me. Aaron, those are bite marks, female wolf marks. What happened? I said it's nothing, he barked, his tone sharp now. His golden eyes flashed briefly, his alpha presence cutting through the air like a knife, but I wasn't intimidated. My mind was already racing ahead, piecing together the implications. Freya had done this. Aaron, I said more quietly, my voice trembling as the pieces locked into place. Did Freya do this to you? He stiffened, his jaw tightening as silence enveloped the room. That was it. His reaction confirmed it. Freya had broken our agreement. She wasn't keeping her word. Aaron abruptly stood, brushing past me without another word. The door closed behind him with a resounding thud, leaving me alone with my swirling thoughts and simmering rage. The next morning, I marched straight into Freya's office. I wasn't going to wait. I wasn't going to let this slide. She was standing by the conference table, her white wolf's calm demeanor evident even before I spoke. She was looking over a stack of documents, entirely focused, as if the drama surrounding her didn't exist. Freya! I snapped, my voice echoing sharply in the quiet room. She glanced up, her violet eyes settling on me. There wasn't a hint of surprise or defensiveness in her expression. Caroline, she said evenly. What's this about? I crossed the room quickly, my wolf growling within me. You broke our agreement, I hissed, my hands tightening on the edge of the table to steady myself. Her brows furrowed slightly. What agreement? Her calmness made my blood boil, the one where you maintain distance from Aaron before the mate bond severance. My voice shook with fury. Her expression didn't change, though I thought I saw a flicker of confusion pass over her features. I haven't broken any agreement, Caroline. Don't lie to me, I growled, my voice rising uncontrollably. I saw the bite marks on Aaron's arm. You think you can just weasel your way back into his life while pretending to let go? Freya's forehead creased as she leaned back slightly. Bite marks? She tilted her head. Oh, those! Yes, those! I shouted, slamming a hand against the table. Explain them. She didn't flinch. Her voice when she spoke was cold and steady. Self-defense, she said plainly. I blinked, caught off guard. What? He tried to assert his alpha dominance, and I defended myself, she clarified, her tone icy and unyielding. Her explanation made my breath hitch. My wolf paced restlessly in shock, trying to grasp the weight of her words. You're telling me you bit an alpha in self-defense? I demanded, my voice filled with disbelief. When necessary, she said simply, the calmness of her tone infuriating me further. I struggled for words, feeling my control slip. My wolf snarled with rage, my earlier suspicion blurring into confusion and desperation. You're trying to stop the mate bond severance, aren't you? I pressed, stepping closer. My voice trembled with fury now. Freya's expression remained stoic, her unshaken calm only driving my wolf further into a frenzy. Why would I bother? She said coldly. Her violet eyes bore into mine with an intensity that sent a chill down my spine. Aaron values you too much for your so-called heroics during the rival pack attack years ago. That's a debt he will never forget. She paused, her gaze unwavering. Isn't it? Chapter 53. A Bittersweet Promise. Caroline sat across from me, her back impossibly straight, her polished nails tapping rhythmically against the edge of my desk. Her every movement was calculated and deliberate, as if the slightest display of emotion would somehow be a weakness. I want your word, she said, her voice firm yet laced with tension. Her eyes, darker than usual, stared at me unblinking. You'll leave after Elder Catherine's surgery, as we agreed? I could see how badly she needed confirmation. Her wolf's agitation seeped into the air between us, though she fought to keep her calm exterior. Her desperation was almost tangible. Yes, I replied, my tone deliberately steady. I'll keep my word. After the surgery, I'll leave Northern Ridgepack territory for 5 years. The effect was instant. Her shoulders eased slightly, the stiffness in her posture fading as her wolf calmed. Relief washed over her features, softening the sharp angles of her face. And, she hesitated, her voice quieter now, but the demand was still there. You won't contact Aaron? No letters, no visits, not even through the pack communication channels? I forced myself not to roll my eyes. I won't. Once the mate bond is severed, I'll be gone. No contact, no interference. Caroline exhaled slowly. She leaned back in the chair, crossing her legs with a grace that came naturally to her. A small, victorious smile spread across her face. Good. This is the best thing for everyone. Aaron deserves peace to focus on the pack and his future. His future, I echoed quietly, the words bitter on my tongue. I kept my expression neutral, but my wolf Bella stirred uneasily. With you, I suppose. She looked at me then, her wolf rising subtly in her expression, though she didn't vocalize the confirmation. Instead, she offered an overly sweet smile. I'm glad you understand. I'll make sure everything is smoothly handled before your departure. I nodded, unwilling to give her the satisfaction of further words. After a moment's pause, she rose from her seat, smoothing non-existent wrinkles on her skirt. Every movement screamed victory. I suppose I'll leave you to your work, then, she said, tossing a lingering glance at me before heading for the door. Let me know if you change your mind about any of this. Though I trust you'll hold to your word, Freya. When she was finally gone, I let out the breath I didn't realize I had been holding. The scent of her perfume lingered in the office, mixing with the indignant frustration Bella was radiating. My wolf hated bending to Caroline, but we both knew there were bigger priorities. More important things. I placed a hand on my stomach, a soft protective gesture. My gaze fell to the floor as I whispered, It's just us now, little one. But we'll be okay, I promise. Bella purred quietly within me as if offering her approval. The weight of what lay ahead felt immense, but I needed strength for the cub growing inside me. We'll find somewhere safe, I murmured, feeling the faint stir of warmth under my hand. My lips curled into a soft, sad smile. A new place. Far away. Maybe some of our old pack members will join us eventually. A pack doesn't have to be big to be strong, right? I thought briefly of my father, former Alpha Jonathan Snow. Even after losing our family's territory, he had fought with a level of determination I admired. He wouldn't approve of my current path, but I couldn't burden him with these troubles. Not now. The day passed quicker than I expected, and before I realized it, we were at the medical facility. Elder Catherine lay in her bed, her frail hands gripping the blanket, covering her legs as she chatted warmly about the surgery preparations. She looked more delicate today, her gray hair pinned neatly back, her wrinkled skin pale against the hospital gown. But her eyes, those sharp, knowing eyes, still held life. This isn't my first time with a healer, you know, Elder Catherine said with a smile, breaking the silence. But Aaron worries like I'm made of glass. Always has, hasn't he? He does, I agreed lightly, sitting close enough to take her hand if needed. Aaron leaned casually by the window, his golden eyes watching the cars passing outside. He didn't say much, but his presence filled the room regardless. I wanted to ease the tension, to bring some normalcy into the moment. "Remember when Aaron tried to lead his first hunt?" I asked, glancing at her. Her eyes lit up with recognition. "Oh, how could I forget? He was so determined to prove himself." "And ended up chasing a deer straight into the river," I finished for her, laughing softly. "You and Beta James had to fish him out." Elder Catherine laughed, her wrinkled face glowing with amusement. That boy, so full of energy but no sense of direction that day. Even Aaron's lips twitched in the faintest of smiles. "I was testing the pack's swimming abilities," he remarked dryly, though I saw the flicker of fond memory in his eyes. "Of course you were, dear," Elder Catherine teased, patting his arm affectionately. "Always thinking strategically, even as a pup." The light-hearted mood lingered as we shared more stories, each one lifting the heavy air around us. For a while, even Aaron relaxed, his rare smile appearing in genuine moments. When evening approached, I offered to stay overnight to ensure Elder Catherine was comfortable. "Nonsense," she said sternly, waving a weak hand in protest. "Both of you need proper rest. I'll be just fine here. The staff will take care of me." I opened my mouth to argue, but Aaron stepped in smoothly. "You know how stubborn she is," he said, the corner of his mouth quirking up. "We'll only upset her by lingering." Elder Catherine nodded, satisfied. "Go on now, both of you. I need my beauty sleep." The drive back to the pack house was silent. The road stretched ahead, illuminated by the car's headlights cutting through the darkness. I stared out the window, my thoughts swirling, while Bella paced restlessly inside me. Aaron broke the silence, his voice steady. "The surgeon assured me the procedure will go smoothly. They're anticipating a quick recovery." "I'm sure she'll be fine," I replied, though my tone lacked the confidence I wanted to project. When we arrived home, Aaron headed toward our room, pausing only briefly to look over his shoulder. "Get some rest. Shower first, though. The day's been long." I started to move toward the bathroom, but halted mid-step. A question I shouldn't ask pushed forward, unbidden. "When will we sever the mate bond?" My voice was softer than I intended, the words hesitating halfway out. "Before or after the surgery?" His reaction was immediate. The temperature in the room seemed to drop as his posture stiffened. Aaron turned slowly, his eyes glowing gold as alpha energy pulsed off him in waves. "Why does it matter?" His voice was deceptively calm but layered with icy undertones. I faltered, suddenly regretting my curiosity. "I just thought, are you so eager to end it?" His question cut through my attempt to dismiss the moment. His golden gaze pinned me in place, demanding an answer. Small breaths escaped me as I tried to compose myself. "That's not tomorrow," he interrupted sharply, his words slicing. "We'll visit the pack council in the morning, before the surgery." I nodded, my throat dry. He turned abruptly, stalking into the bathroom without another word. The door closed with a jarring slam, leaving me alone in the icy silence. My legs felt heavy as I moved toward the small safe tucked into the corner of the room. I input the combination slowly, my fingers lingering over the last number before the door clicked open. Inside were the pack marking documents, the official seal still gleaming faintly under the soft bedroom light. My hand trembled slightly as I picked them up. The papers felt heavier than they should, as though the memories embedded in them weighed more than the ink and parchment. My mind drifted back to the day of our marking ceremony. I could vividly recall standing before the pack, nerves twisting uncomfortably in my stomach. My hands had been cold, trembling slightly against my sides. I glanced at Aaron, who stood beside me with calm certainty. Noticing my nerves, he leaned in close. "Shy, aren't you?" he teased in a whisper, his voice warm in contrast to the biting wind that day. "You'll be a terrible Luna if you keep shaking like this." I shot him a glare which only made him grin. "Relax, Snow Princess." "Ha," he murmured. "I don't bite. Well, not too hard." "Stop messing with me," I hissed, though my blush betrayed me. He smirked, taking my hand as we turned to face Pack Elder Anderson. His touch was gentle but grounding, his thumb brushing over my knuckles in a silent reassurance I hadn't known I needed. When the time came for the ceremonial marking, Aaron leaned in close, his breath warm against my neck. He whispered, "Follow the elder's instructions. Don't make me look bad." Then came his bite. gentle, almost reverent, yet his fangs lingered just long enough to remind me of his strength. "Behave," he had said, his tone laced with both teasing and alpha authority, "or I might bite harder." The memory was bittersweet now, a sharp contrast to the coldness between us. Bella whimpered softly, sharing my pain. As I ran my fingers over the documents one last time, I felt a pang deep in my chest. Tomorrow, these papers would no longer hold meaning. Tomorrow, everything would end. Chapter 54. A Bitter Parting. I sat on the cold, hard floor, leaning back against the pack house safe. My hands dangled limply at my sides as memories of the past clawed at me with sharp, unrelenting edges. It wasn't the big moments that hurt the most. It was the small ones. Tiny fragments of time. The way Aaron laughed the first time Bella yipped at Logan on a pack run. The gentle nudge of his massive black wolf nudging mine during a hunt, as if we'd always been in sync. The rare moments when, just for a second, I thought he saw me as more than an obligation. I closed my eyes and exhaled shakily. Foolish. I'd been so foolish. Every connection we'd ever shared, every flicker of warmth between us, had been nothing but my wolf's desperate longing for a bond that wasn't real. Bella whimpered weakly in my mind. I could feel her curling into herself, unable to face the truth we'd always known. Aaron was never truly ours. My hands tightened into fists as pain twisted through my chest, wrapping around my ribs like a vice. I pressed my palms flat against the floor, trying to ground myself, even as my wolf echoed her despair. The sound of the shower shutting off jolted me back to the moment. Doors creaked, and I heard his footsteps before I saw him. Then Aaron came into view. He was dressed in nothing but a towel slung low around his hips, droplets of water still clinging to his skin. For a brief moment, I envied how composed he looked, cool, detached, untouchable. Then his golden wolf eyes flickered to the papers in my hands, the mate marking documents. His entire demeanor shifted. Tension rolled off him in waves as his eyes narrowed. "You really couldn't wait, could you?" he said, his voice low and cold. The harshness of his tone startled me, but I tried not to flinch. My grip tightened on the documents as if they could shield me from the weight of his gaze. For a moment, I thought about replying, about pointing out that he was the one who had driven this decision. But what would be the point? The truth was plain. He wanted to sever the bond, not for freedom, but for her. "Caroline." I lowered my eyes, clutching the papers tighter. There was nothing left to say. Aaron scoffed bitterly at my silence. "What's the matter, be now? No sharp comeback this time," he sneered. When I didn't respond, his lips curled into a mocking smile. "Typical. You're just too busy playing the role, aren't you?" I blinked up at him in confusion. "Role?" "Acting like you care," he hissed. "Trying to make me feel guilty before our final severance. Spare me?" My chest tightened at his cruel words, but I forced my expression to remain neutral. I wouldn't let him see the pain he caused me. Not anymore. He ran a hand through his damp hair, letting out a frustrated sigh. "I'll be sleeping in the study tonight," he said curtly. His tone left no room for argument. "Grandmother's surgery is tomorrow. I need rest. Actual rest." He didn't wait for a response. He turned on his heel and strode out, slamming the door behind him. Silence pressed down on the room once he was gone. My eyes fell to the documents in my hands. It felt like I was holding the remnants of a broken promise. Slowly, I rose to my feet and placed the papers on the nightstand. My shoulders sagged. My body felt heavy, too heavy to bear. I dragged myself into the bathroom, hoping the hot water would burn away the ache in my chest. The next morning wasn't any kinder to me than the night before. When I looked at my reflection in the mirror, I recoiled. Shadows painted themselves under my eyes, dark against the pallor of my skin. My hair was a tangled mess that looked beyond salvaging. But what startled me the most was how lifeless I seemed. Was this how I appeared to Aaron? To everyone else? I took a deep breath and grabbed my concealer. I dabbed at my dark circles, working quickly to cover the evidence of my sleepless night. I layered on just enough to make myself appear as composed as possible. Elder Catherine deserved better than to see me like this. She needed my strength today. Just as I finished smoothing down my hair, Aaron's voice echoed in my mind. His tone was sharp and direct. "Meet me in the garage." Nothing more. No pleasantries or warmth. It was the tone of an alpha giving orders. With a final glance at the mirror, I straightened my posture and grabbed my bag. My eyes flicked briefly to the mate-marking documents on the nightstand before I forced myself to look away. The garage was cold despite the thin morning sunlight streaming through the windows. Aaron stood by the car, his arms crossed. He wasn't wearing a jacket. Smoke clung to his clothes, not overwhelming but enough to catch my wolf's enhanced senses. He looked like he hadn't slept either. His dark hair was messier than usual, and there was a tightness around his jaw that hadn't been there the night before. I stopped a few steps away, suddenly unsure of what to say. "Did you sleep well?" he asked abruptly. The question caught me off guard. I could feel his exhaustion through our bond. It mirrored my own, but I found myself lying anyway. "Yes, I slept fine." Aaron's piercing gold gaze locked onto mine for a long moment. Then he scoffed, the sound low and bitter. "Liar," he muttered under his breath. My chest tightened, but I ignored his comment. "Are we leaving now?" I asked, keeping my tone neutral. His lips curled into a half smirk that didn't reach his eyes. "Why so eager? Got somewhere else to be?" "I assumed you'd want to get this done quickly," I replied evenly. "You mentioned your schedule was busy today." Aaron gave a harsh laugh that lacked any humor. "Oh, and when have you ever cared about my schedule, Freya?" I clenched my fists at my sides. "Why wouldn't I care? Your grandmother's surgery is today." "Enough," he cut me off. "Stop pretending." The tension between us was suffocating. My wolf whined softly in my mind, but I forced myself to remain still. "If you're done playing concerned Luna," Aaron said mockingly, "maybe you can tell me why you seem so desperate to run off to the Pack Council." His taunt ignited something in me. The fire in my chest burned hotter, threatening to overflow. "I thought this was what you wanted, Aaron," I shot back, unable to keep the edge from my voice. Aaron's eyes narrowed, and his voice dropped dangerously low. "Careful, Snow Princess. You're starting to sound spoiled again." I forced a tight smile to my lips. Spoiled? My father did raise me well. That hit its mark. The tension in Aaron's shoulders was all too visible as he clenched his fists. Before he could retort, I marched past him and climbed into the car. "Don't forget the documents," I called over my shoulder tersely. For a moment, Aaron didn't move. Then, without a word, he grabbed the envelope containing the mate marking papers and slid into the driver's seat. Neither of us spoke as the car pulled out of the garage. The ride to the Pack Council office was unnervingly smooth. The soft hum of the engine was the only sound, both of us unwilling or unable to break the silence. As we pulled into the parking lot, the sight of other couples waiting their turn struck me harder than I expected. Most of them were younger, glowing with excitement as they prepared to officially mark their bonds. The way they leaned on each other, their fingers brushing, their wolves playfully nudging against one another, it was everything our bond had never been. I felt the sharp edges of reality digging into me again. Aaron's fists rested on the steering wheel, his knuckles white with tension. He didn't look at me. He didn't have to. The suffocating silence between us told me everything I needed to know. To anyone watching from the outside, his grim expression and alpha aura left no room for interpretation. This visit wasn't for joy or celebration or unity. This was the beginning of the end. Chapter 55, A Bitter Waiting. The Pack Council office was abuzz with activity, wolves coming and going, their voices blending into a low hum. The waiting area was crowded with pairs preparing for their mate-marking ceremonies. The atmosphere was almost festive, filled with excitement and laughter. And then there was us. I sat quietly in one of the stiff plastic chairs, staring down at my hands as tension wrapped around my chest like a heavy chain. The seat beside me, though empty, felt like it carried its own weight. Aaron stood a few feet away, towering and sharp like a blade, unmoving as always. His powerful frame blocked the pale morning sunlight streaming through the large windows, his arms crossed tightly over his chest. "You can sit," I offered softly, glancing at the empty chair next to me. "I prefer standing," he replied coldly, his gaze fixed somewhere far beyond the room. I nodded a little, more to myself than him. He didn't want to interact with me. I understood. Soon he would no longer have to. He'd be free to be with Caroline. The thought should have brought relief. Instead, it churned cold bitterness in the pit of my stomach. My wolf Bella stirred weakly inside me, her presence a faint echo. Even she had resigned herself to our fate, her usual spirited growl reduced to a low, resigned whimper. The tiny spark of life within my belly, the only real warmth I had left, offered small comfort. We weren't staying here. This wasn't our place. Not anymore. Around us, the voices of other wolves wove a tapestry of whispers, hushed conversations carrying across the waiting area. My enhanced hearing picked up every word, and I knew Aaron was attuned to them too. "They look perfect together, don't they?" a woman murmured somewhere nearby. "You'd never guess they're here to sever their mate bond." "What a waste," a man sighed. "Such strong bloodlines, imagine their cubs. They could have become legendary." My breath hitched. The mention of cubs sent my hand instinctively to my stomach. I forced it back down before anyone could notice. Aaron's reaction was harder to gauge. He still stood stiffly, his golden eyes hard and unfocused. But when the next voice chimed in, I caught the faintest shift in his demeanor. "Even after severance," an older wolf said, "it makes sense to have at least one cub. For the pack's legacy, of course. That kind of bloodline is too rare to let go to waste." Aaron's jaw clenched. The muscles in his neck rippled, and for a brief second, his eyes gleamed with dangerous gold. I stared down at my lap, trying to focus on the numbness that had crept over me. It was better this way, to feel nothing. But I couldn't tune out the whispers. "Do you think they already had a cub?" someone asked. "They've been mated for years, haven't they?" A young she-wolf giggled. "Hard to imagine them discussing anything like that. He's so stoic, and she's, well, quiet." "Caroline would have been a better match," another voice added in a hushed whisper. "She saved his life, after all. The pack already sees her as the real Luna." The bitterness crept higher, curling like smoke in my throat. "Are you hungry?" Aaron's voice suddenly sliced through the whispers, startling me. I blinked and looked up at him. His gaze was steady, locked on mine, and there was an edge of impatience in his tone. "Are you talking to me?" I asked hesitantly. "Who else would I be talking to?" he snapped, though there wasn't much vigor in it. "You haven't eaten since yesterday." "I'm fine," I said quickly, the automatic response leaving my mouth before I could think it through. His eyes narrowed slightly, his lips pressing into a thin line. "You should eat. There won't be time later, not on the way to the medical facility." The dismissal of my protest was clear. Before I could argue further, he turned and headed for the exit. His broad shoulders cut through the gathering crowds easily, and like magic, the wolves that had been eavesdropping moments ago gave way to let him pass. I let out a shaky breath, unsure how to interpret his sudden concern. Was it genuine? Or just the alpha side of him playing its part? It didn't matter. Nothing about his actions today could change our reality. The moment Aaron disappeared out the door, the wolves that had been too afraid to approach earlier suddenly filled the space he left. "Luna Freya?" One of the junior wolves, Amanda Wilson, began hesitantly, stepping closer with a tentative smile. "I hope we're not intruding, but is it true? Are you really severing the mate bond with Alpha Aaron?" My wolf, Bella, bristled at the intrusion, but I kept my composure, straightening in my seat. "These matters are pack business," I replied evenly, choosing my words carefully. "I'm sure you understand." The young wolves exchanged embarrassed glances, but Amanda persisted. "We mean no offense," she added quickly. "It's just, you two have always seemed so perfect for each other." Rachel Thompson, a beta wolf beside her, nodded in agreement. "The pack always admired your strength as a Luna. A lot of us looked up to you." The faintest twinge of guilt twisted in my chest. They meant well, I supposed. Still, their words scratched at old wounds I'd tried so hard to numb. "Thank you," I said softly, my tone carefully polite. "That means a great deal." The conversation shifted to lighter topics: territory runs, upcoming training sessions, wolf traditions. I smiled when appropriate and added the occasional comment, but my thoughts were elsewhere. With every word, the weight of Elder Catherine's surgery, the mate bond severance, and my unborn cub pressed heavier on my shoulders. The distinct sound of Aaron's footsteps silenced the group instantly. His return was heralded by the quick dispersal of the curious wolves, their nervous glances over their shoulders betraying their discomfort under his alpha glare. Aaron's frown deepened as he stopped in front of me, his piercing eyes scanning the now vacant space around me. "What did they want?" he asked sharply, his voice low but edged with authority. "They were curious," I replied simply, meeting his gaze with all the calm I could muster. "About why we're here." His jaw tightened, his golden eyes scrutinizing me for any signs of deception. But there was no lie in what I'd said. And so the silence returned, heavier and colder than before. I folded my hands neatly in my lap, staring down at them to avoid meeting his eyes. The weight of this moment, of everything we had lost, of everything we were about to sever, pressed down on us both. The waiting room buzzed with life around us, yet it felt as though we were locked away in a bubble of isolation. Two wolves once bound, now waiting for the final act of their unbinding. Bella stirred faintly within me, her presence a soft echo of the tiny spark of life we carried. I steadied my breathing, grounding myself in the knowledge that soon this would all be over. Soon I would be gone. Chapter 56, A Severance Interrupted. Freya's POV. The fluorescent lights of the Pack Council headquarters glared down at us, casting stark reflections on the polished tiles. It was as if the building itself mocked the cold silence between Aaron and me. The protein bars he'd picked up from the Pack kitchen sat untouched on the bench between us. Their shiny wrappers caught the light, but I couldn't bring myself to even glance at them. The air was filled with the smell of excitement and joy from other wolves. The waiting area buzzed quietly with energy, mostly from young couples here for their mate-marking ceremonies. A newly bonded pair left the council chambers ahead of us, their hands intertwined, their eyes filled with love. Their wolves' energy radiated a joy so strong it made me feel hollow inside. I glanced at Aaron. He hadn't moved an inch since we'd sat down. His gaze was fixed straight ahead, his profile carved in stone. It was difficult to tell if he was lost in thought or just unwilling to acknowledge me. His alpha presence was heavy and unapproachable, keeping even the nosiest wolves at bay. Another couple laughed as they walked past. The male's arm was draped protectively across his mate's shoulders, while she shyly held up their freshly marked mate certificates, their wolves practically humming with happiness. The sight brought back memories I wasn't prepared for. I remembered the day Aaron and I had stood in this very hallway. I had felt nervous, like I wasn't ready. My hands had trembled so badly that I couldn't even hold the ceremonial document properly until he grabbed my hand. "Relax, Snow Princess," he had whispered with an easy smile, his warm palm still steadying mine. His teasing tone had melted some of my nerves back then. But now those memories felt like punches to the gut. We sat just inches apart, but the emotional distance between us was unbearable. Luna Snow, Alpha Steele. A Pack Council staff member's sharp voice broke me out of my thoughts. She held a clipboard and scanned the room impatiently. "It's your turn." I got to my feet automatically, smoothing my coat, my legs stiff like lead. Aaron didn't budge. He stayed seated, his fingers tapping idly against his knee. My eyes darted to him. He didn't so much as glance up. "Aaron," I said softly. His name felt heavy on my tongue. Saying it out loud brought an unexpected ache to my chest. "They're calling us." He blinked, but still didn't move. His shoulders stayed rigid, his jaw tight. I didn't want to push him further. What was the point? I walked toward the council chamber alone, trying to ignore the whispers erupting around us. I didn't need to hear their judgment. I already knew what they thought. Just as my hand hovered near the door handle, his phone buzzed on the bench. Loud and sharp, it sliced through the quiet murmur of the waiting area. Aaron reached into his pocket, frowning slightly. "You should answer that," I murmured. "I'll wait inside." I didn't wait to see his reaction. I needed to get this over with. But before I could step inside, his hand shot out, wrapping around my wrist. His grip wasn't tight, but it was firm enough to stop me in my tracks. My pulse quickened. "It's the medical facility," he said simply, his voice low, "where grandmother is." My stomach dropped. My wolf Bella bristled immediately, claws scraping against the edges of my mind. Her unease mirrored mine. "Answer it," I urged. My voice shook, betraying my rising panic. "Please, Aaron." He didn't argue. Aaron pressed the phone to his ear, his brows furrowing as he listened. Every passing second made my chest tighten further. Bella paced frantically, whining softly. Something was wrong. I could feel it. Aaron's eyes began to flicker gold, his wolf Logan surfacing in response to what he was hearing. It was never a good sign when his wolf displayed emotion so openly. My hand curled into fists, nails digging into my palms as I watched his expression darken even further. When he finally lowered the phone, his shoulders stiffened. His jaw worked, grinding out the words through clenched teeth. Grandmother took a turn during pre-surgery prep. The world swayed for a moment. Bella stilled completely, her whines turning into a pained growl deep in the back of my mind. "We need to go. Now," he added, already rising to his feet. I nodded hurriedly, following him out the door. The staff exchanged confused glances, whispering among themselves about our abrupt departure. I barely heard them over the racing of my heart. The drive back to the medical facility was tense. Silence filled the car, thick and suffocating. My thoughts raced uncontrollably. Guilt clawed at me with every mile that passed. "I shouldn't have left her," I whispered suddenly, breaking the silence. My voice cracked under the weight of unspoken shame. "I should have stayed. What was I thinking?" Aaron didn't respond immediately, but I felt his gaze flick toward me briefly. "Freya," he started, but I cut him off. "What kind of Luna just leaves someone like Elder Catherine?" My voice shook again, and this time, I couldn't stop the flood of words spilling out. "She depends on me. I promised." I stopped mid-sentence, my throat tightening painfully, and every ounce of my energy went into holding myself together. The car stopped at a red light. I barely noticed my trembling hands clutched tightly in my lap until the metallic taste of blood registered in my mouth. Confused, I licked my lips, only to taste more blood. I'd bitten into my lower lip so hard it had split. "Freya." Aaron's tone was harsher this time. "You're bleeding." He reached over, more out of instinct than anything, and tried to gently pry my chin up to assess the damage. I jerked back, my jaw clenching tighter. "Freya." His voice dropped lower, his alpha tone seeping into it. "Stop." But I couldn't. The panic inside me spiraled uncontrollably. Bella howled in the back of my mind, and my thoughts raced, each one darker than the last. What if I never got to speak to Elder Catherine again? What if? Her silence was louder than any words she could have spoken. Freya's lips were stained red from the blood she refused to acknowledge, and her body was as rigid as a statue. Her breathing was shallow, uneven. I could feel her distress leaking through the mate bond she clearly tried to block. Logan, my wolf, growled impatiently. He hated seeing her like this. We both did. It wasn't like Freya to spiral like this, not the Freya who had lectured elders on diplomacy who faced rival packs calmly, even as they mocked her. This wasn't her. I reached up, gently stroking her cheek, keeping my movements slow. Her skin was cold under my touch, which only made the knot in my chest tighten. "Freya," I murmured, my voice low. "Wake up, Snow Princess." Logan howled at the nickname. It was ours. A small bridge that only we shared from our youth. Even so, the words felt foreign leaving my lips now. Her lashes fluttered, a glimmer of recognition sparking in her tear-filled gaze. A lone tear escaped, trailing down her cheek. "She's going to be fine," I said, forcing conviction into my tone. "Grandmother's strong. You know that better than anyone." Her lips parted slightly, trembling, but no words came. "Look at me," I urged softly. When Bella's golden presence finally began to shift in her energy, I knew she was listening. "Grandmother's going to be all right, but she needs us to be there. She needs you, Freya." More tears spilled, but this time the tension in her shoulders ebbed slightly. Logan whined softly, letting her wolf sense reassurance through every layer of our bond. Chapter 57, Breaking Points. The car was still, stopped at the red light, but the air inside was tense and suffocating. The blaring horns from the impatient drivers behind us added to the weight pressing down on my chest. I turned to Freya, my wolf Logan pacing restlessly in my mind. Her usual calming presence was gone. It was terrifyingly blank. "Freya," I called through the mate bond, no response. Her violet eyes stared ahead, wide but empty, like she wasn't really there. Her pale face was frozen, her jaw clenched so tightly I could see the strain in her neck. "Freya, wake up!" I tried again, louder this time. Still nothing. The cars behind us honked again, their frustrated drivers growing louder and more aggressive. Logan growled. My patience was thinning fast. "Snow Princess!" I snapped, my alpha authority slipping into my voice, but she didn't even flinch. Her complete stillness sent a jolt of panic through me. She had never been like this before. Never so, absent. The drivers behind us weren't letting up, the volume of their frustration grating against my ears. My grip tightened on the steering wheel. I had to do something. Anything. Without thinking, I leaned toward her, my face close to hers. My wolf Logan snarled, urging me to bring her back. "Freya," I growled softly. Then I pressed my lips firmly against hers. She didn't react. Her jaw stayed locked, resisting, unmoving. It was like kissing a statue. I knew her, though. I knew her weaknesses, the things that would make her falter. My hand slid to her waist, fingers pressing into the spot I'd learned was most sensitive. It worked. Her body twitched slightly, just enough for her lips to part. I thought I'd finally reached her, until searing pain shot through my lip. A metallic tang filled my mouth as her teeth sank down hard, drawing blood. I hissed, Logan roaring inside me at the sharp pain. But I didn't back away. My other hand found her waist, pinching her harder. Her grip loosened just enough for me to pull back, blood dripping from my lip where she'd bitten me. "Freya, stop this," I growled, grabbing her chin with a firm yet controlled grip. I had to force my alpha strength not to crush her. I needed to ground her. "Wake her up." "Snow Princess, you need to snap out of it. Wake up!" I growled harshly, my voice carrying the full weight of alpha authority. Her body gave the faintest shudder. Logan's growl softened as her scent subtly shifted, the void starting to fill again. The noise around me crashed in all at once. The blaring horns, angry shouts from the drivers, the vibration of the car's engine. I blinked, my vision clearing as I returned to the present. Aaron's face was right in front of mine, his golden eyes blazing and fixed on me. His grip on my chin was firm but not painful. His expression was harsh, full of frustration, and a flicker of concern he'd probably deny was there. "Finally awake?" His voice came through the mate bond, sharp and cutting. I wanted to respond, but my mouth refused to form words. Aaron's jaw tightened as he released me abruptly, turning his focus back to the road. Without another word, he accelerated through the intersection, ignoring the continuing honks behind us. The silence inside the car wasn't peaceful. It was suffocating. I looked down at my trembling hands, trying to get my breathing under control. My mind was racing, piecing together what had just happened. When I glanced at Aaron, my gaze caught on the smear of blood on his lip. My stomach dropped. The bite. That sharp taste of blood when I had clamped down on his lip. I had bitten Aaron. He caught me staring, his golden eyes meeting mine in the rearview mirror. "Clean yourself up before we get to grandmother," he said sharply. I reached for my bag, pulling out a compact mirror and a tissue. My reflection made me freeze. Blood smudged across my mouth and chin. My lip was swollen where teeth had broken the skin. As I dabbed at the blood, I winced at the stinging pain. Every time I touched the torn skin of my lip, it felt like a fresh wound. "Does it hurt now?" Aaron's voice was laced with cold amusement, though I could feel the edge of anger beneath it. "You nearly took my lip off, Freya." Bella whimpered softly in my mind, echoing the guilt that was building in my chest. I turned slightly in my seat, murmuring, "I lost control. I'm sorry." "Are you?" he said, his tone casual but biting. "Or are you just unhappy with the outcome?" Heat rose to my cheeks. I hated that he could still make me feel cornered like this. "I didn't mean to hurt you," I said quietly. Bella curled lower, the weight of his words pressing down on both of us. His lip twitched, almost like he was fighting a smirk. "Are you all right?" I asked hesitantly, not sure if the words would ease or add to the tension. He raised an eyebrow, glancing at me. "Am I all right? Let me think." He touched his lip dramatically, where dried blood still lingered. "Well, I almost got bitten to death, but I survived. So yes, I suppose I'm all right." I flinched at his sarcasm, my guilt deepening. "You can't intervene like that again," I said after a moment, my voice barely above a whisper. His glare sharpened instantly, his alpha presence filling the car space. "Don't you dare suggest that," he snapped, his voice low but filled with command. "Do you think that's something I can ignore? That I'll just sit by while you spiral out of control? Absolutely not, Freya." His words hung heavily in the air, weighted by the force of his alpha will. My wolf Bella whined softly, her guilt subsiding slightly under the firm reassurance of his tone. Aaron's shoulders relaxed just slightly as his voice softened, though the authority never left it. "Grandmother fainted, Freya. That's all. She's stable now. You need to stop making it worse for yourself." His words, steady and painfully logical, helped calm the storm raging inside me. The medical facility came into view, its clean white walls shining in the sunlight. I parked the car but didn't move to get out right away. Logan was still pacing inside me, unsettled by the events we had just endured. "Wait," Freya said softly, stopping me just as I opened the door. I glanced down to see her holding out a wet wipe, her expression apologetic, though she avoided meeting my eyes. "For your lip," she explained. I grabbed it, but struggled to properly clean the dried blood. Her soft sigh made me pause. "Here, let me." Before I could object, she had moved closer, angling the wipe toward me. I froze, unsure of whether to brush her off or let her proceed. Her fingers were gentle but precise as she wiped away the blood. The faint brush of her touch sent an unfamiliar warmth through me. Logan stilled, watching her every move. Her closeness brought her scent back into sharp focus. The exhaustion lingered, as did the faint tension she tried to hide under her composed exterior. Through our bond, I pushed a thought. "You said you slept well last night. That was a lie, wasn't it?" Her hand hesitated for the briefest moment before continuing. That brief pause was all the confirmation I needed. Logan growled softly in irritation. She could hide her words, but not her tired scent or the shadows under her eyes. Chapter 58, Postponed Plans. Freya's POV. The silence in the car felt suffocating as we arrived at the medical facility. My hands were clasped so tightly in my lap that my knuckles had gone pale. Aaron stepped out of the car first, his movements brisk and tense, a clear sign that his patience was thin. I followed, trying to ignore the knots twisting in my stomach. The cool autumn air nipped at my skin as we walked toward the entrance, and I placed a hand protectively over my stomach. Bella whimpered softly within me, sensing my worry. Once we entered the facility, the sterile scent hit me immediately. It made my nerves feel sharper, my breaths more shallow. Dr. William Parker was waiting for us outside Elder Catherine's room, his expression stern. "Alpha Steele, Luna Snow," he greeted with a slight bow of his head. My heart froze at the sight of his composed demeanor. It wasn't the kind of composure meant to reassure. It felt more like the calm before delivering bad news. Aaron obviously sensed it as well because his golden eyes darkened. "What happened?" Aaron's tone was clipped, his alpha authority surging into the space like lightning seeking a target. Dr. Parker cleared his throat, standing a little straighter under the weight of Aaron's intense gaze. Elder Catherine experienced severe anxiety during the pre-surgery preparations. It overwhelmed her, and she fainted. The word fainted sliced through me. I bit down on my lower lip, trying to steady my breathing. Bella let out a low, mournful growl in my mind. "Is she stable now?" Aaron demanded before I could ask, his voice carrying a sharp edge. "Yes," Dr. Parker assured him, holding his ground. "Her vitals have returned to normal, but her wolf remains under strain. The stress was too great for her." Hearing that didn't make it any easier. My fingers tightened their grip on my coat. Elder Catherine was the matriarch of this pack, the one who always seemed unshakable. Seeing her like this felt unbearable. Aaron's sharp tone snapped me out of my spiraling thoughts. "What about the surgery?" Dr. Parker shook his head solemnly. "It will have to be postponed. Her wolf is not strong enough to endure the procedure. For now, the focus must be on stabilizing her emotional and physical health." "How long?" Aaron's question came forth like a command, though I could hear the tension buried beneath it. "At least 2 weeks, Alpha," the healer replied firmly. "We'll use herbal treatments and start wolf counseling with Counselor Sarah Thompson. Both should help her recover enough stability to proceed." The weight of 2 weeks hung thick in the air. It wasn't the kind of delay that anyone welcomed, but I understood why it was necessary. Still, knowing didn't ease the ache gnawing at my chest. Bella let out another whimper, echoing my pain. Aaron exhaled hard through his nose but nodded once. "Fine. Can we see her?" "Of course," Dr. Parker said gently. "She's resting, but your presence will help calm her wolf." Together, Aaron and I stepped into the room. Elder Catherine lay in the hospital bed, her gray hair carefully pinned back, her eyes closed. The pale tint to her skin made her look smaller, more fragile. It sent another wave of guilt washing over me. I moved toward her slowly, almost afraid that any sudden movement might disturb her. As I reached her bedside, I hesitated before finally taking her hand. It felt so cold in mine. A lump formed in my throat, but I swallowed it down. I couldn't lose composure. Not here. Bella scratched at the back of my mind, pushing forward feelings of guilt and helplessness. She never wavered in her attachment to Elder Catherine, and right now, her pain was my pain. Aaron stood rigid by the window, staring out at the muted scenery. His entire frame radiated tension, yet he stayed silent. For a while, neither of us spoke. The steady sound of Elder Catherine's soft breathing filled the room, a reminder that she was still here, still fighting. Then the shrill ring of a phone shattered the moment. My head snapped toward Aaron's pocket just as he pulled the device out with a frown. When I saw the name on the screen, Caroline, my chest tightened. Aaron glanced at the phone and then at me. It was a pause filled with hesitation. "You should take that," I said softly, trying to keep my tone neutral. "The hallway might be better." He studied my face for a beat longer, searching for something I wasn't willing to show. Then, without a word, he turned and exited the room, leaving the door to click shut behind him. When Aaron finally picked up, my voice came out sharper than intended. "You didn't call me back," I said, my worry barely hidden. I was starting to think something had gone horribly wrong with Elder Catherine. "She fainted before surgery," Aaron replied, his tone heavy and direct. "We're postponing the operation." The breath I'd been holding left me all at once. "Postponed? For how long?" 2 weeks at least," he said, a hint of irritation creeping into his voice. "I won't push it. The decision has already been made." "Of course," I said quickly, wanting to ease the tension I could sense from him. "Her health comes first." But those 2 words, 2 weeks, they added a weight to my chest I couldn't ignore. That was far longer than I had planned for. "And about the Pack Council?" I hesitated. My tone softened, careful not to aggravate him further. "It's postponed too," he answered shortly. Every carefully laid plan I had worked so hard for today dropped away in a single heartbeat. I gripped my phone tightly, keeping my voice steady. "I see. That's completely understandable." "Right now, my focus is my grandmother," Aaron said firmly, leaving no room for debate. "I know," I murmured, my free hand curling into a trembling fist. "Please let me know if there's anything I can do to help her. Anything at all." His voice remained distant, detached. "I'll let you know." With that, the line disconnected. I was left standing there, staring blankly at the screen. My plans for celebrating the severance tonight, for finalizing every little detail about our future, had crumbled. Nothing had gone the way I envisioned. "Caroline?" Rebecca Winter's overly cheerful voice startled me, and I turned to see her bouncing into the room with several other Redwood allies in tow. Their expressions mirrored her excitement, practically buzzing with enthusiasm. "You must be thrilled," Rebecca gushed, her eyes lighting up. "We heard the news. Congratulations." I blinked, a sinking feeling growing in the pit of my stomach. "What news?" "That Aaron's finally free from that political mating," she said with a grin. "You must be so relieved." Another wolf nodded eagerly. "It's only a matter of time now before you're officially Luna." I felt my patience cracking under their relentless optimism. "What about the marking ceremony?" Someone else chimed in. "Have you started planning? We'd love to help." "Stop," I snapped, my voice cutting through their chatter like a whip. The collective shock on their faces was almost laughable, but I could barely see it through the frustration clouding my thoughts. "Can't you see what's happening?" I demanded, my tone harsh. "Elder Catherine is ill. This isn't the time for celebrations or dress fittings. Nothing has even happened yet." Rebecca flinched, clearly taken aback. "Caroline, we just wanted to support you." "Well, don't," I interrupted sharply, my voice colder than I intended. "This isn't about me right now." The weight of their stares burned into me as silence fell over the room. Chapter 59, Hidden Agendas. The room was so quiet that you could hear a pin drop. All the eyes in the room were on me after my outburst. Rebecca Winters, Emma Parker, Rachel Lewis, and the others from the Redwood Pack looked stunned. Their wide eyes and hesitation made me realize what I had just done. I had snapped at my closest allies. My throat tightened as panic flickered in my chest. This wasn't the image I wanted to show them. My allies needed to see a composed, capable leader, not someone coming undone. Rebecca was the first to move. She darted toward me, wrapping her arms around me in an attempt to comfort me. "Oh, Caroline, we didn't mean to upset you." Her voice was rushed and nervous. "It's just that we care about you. We're trying to help." My vision blurred. Tears filled my eyes before I could stop them. They spilled over, and I choked on a sob. I'm sorry." My voice cracked, making the apology sound even more pitiful. Emma quickly handed me a tissue, her brows furrowed in concern. Caroline, it's okay. You've been under so much pressure lately. It's understandable. Rachel placed a hand on my shoulder, her tone open and concerned. It's the stress, isn't it? The postponed surgery? The mate bond severance delay? I managed a shaky nod, dabbing at my cheeks with the tissue. It's all so much. Everything feels like it's spinning out of my control. Rebecca tightened her hold on me as the others watched, their expressions dark with anger, but not toward me. No, their anger was focused squarely on someone else. It's Freya's fault, Rebecca hissed, her words spilling out like venom. She's using every excuse to cling to her position and her mate bond with Aaron. It's disgusting. She doesn't deserve to be Luna, Rachel added coldly, her wolf flashing through her tone of voice. Aaron deserves someone stronger, someone like you, Caroline. The other pack members nodded in agreement. Emma leaned closer to me, her voice dropping into a low, angry tone. She's not fooling anyone. This whole act, pretending she's so perfect, it's a joke. I sniffled, lowering the tissue from my face. I needed to play this right. Carefully. She is still Elder Catherine's caretaker, I murmured softly. She's trying her best for Aaron's grandmother. Ha! Rebecca's laugh was short and sharp. You're too kind. Caroline, we know what Freya is really doing. She's dragging this out to keep Aaron chained to her. She's a coward. Rachel crossed her arms, her wolf practically snarling beneath her calculated tone. A lesson needs to be taught. Someone needs to show her she can't keep playing these games. The room grew colder as the tension thickened. My allies were fired up, their collective anger toward Freya bubbling dangerously. This was an opportunity I couldn't afford to ignore. Still, I couldn't let them see just how much I agreed with them. My plans required subtlety, not recklessness. Please, I said softly, letting my voice tremble. Don't act rashly. Violence or anger might make things worse with the Northern Ridge Pack. Freya is a Luna, for now. Rebecca's eyes flashed with indignation. She stepped back, her wolf looming closer to the surface. Caroline, why are you defending her? I'm not, I insisted, lifting my hands as though in surrender. I can handle this. Let me speak to her myself. Aaron and Freya are both under so much pressure already with Elder Catherine's health. I don't want to escalate things. For a moment, Rebecca seemed unconvinced. Her wolf simmered just beneath her sharp glare. But Rachel and Emma quickly interjected, nodding toward her. She's right, Rachel murmured. Caroline is smart. Let her handle it. Emma frowned, but relented. Fine. But if she steps out of line again? Their compliance didn't quell my unease. Watching the fire in their eyes, I could tell they had no intention of letting this go. Their wolves wanted battle, even if it was subtle at first. As I poured wine into their glasses, lifting the mood with polite small talk, I caught the sly glances they exchanged. Their whispers were gone, but their silence spoke volumes. My allies were planning something I could not control or stop. The steady beeping of a monitor echoed around Elder Catherine's hospital room. It was the only sound breaking the silence between Aaron and me. She looked so frail like this. Her gray hair framed her face, and her pale skin made her seem smaller than she ever had before. I clutched the blanket resting over her, my heart aching as guilt gnawed at me yet again. Bella whimpered deeply in my mind, her sorrow mirroring my own. She'll recover, Aaron said suddenly. But his deep voice broke through my spiral of worry. I glanced at him by the windows. His broad shoulders remained tense, his golden eyes watching the scenery outside like he was trying to distract himself. But I could see it, the tightness in his body and jaw. He was worried, too. The wolf healers returned with 2 bowls of hot, protein-rich broth as part of a meal for us. They placed them on the bedside table before bowing. Luna, Alpha, one of them murmured respectfully before quietly leaving. Aaron's head turned toward me, his gaze locked on mine before briefly dropping to the untouched bowl near me. You need to eat, he said sternly, his no-nonsense tone filling the small room. I hesitated, my expression resisting him. I don't feel like eating. That's not an option, he replied bluntly, his eyes narrowing. Eat for Elder Catherine's sake. Or don't, and let her see you fall apart in front of her. Let her fall. A sharp pang hit my chest. My lips pressed into a thin line as his words sank in. Bella growled softly, pushing me to listen. Fine, for Elder Catherine's sake, and my cubs. I reached for the bowl and began taking small spoonfuls. The broth was warm and nourishing, but my nerves numbed any real enjoyment. Aaron's gaze didn't leave me once. It was piercing and heavy, sinking into me deeper than words ever could. "What?" I finally muttered, setting the half-empty bowl down. "Finish it," was all he said before turning back toward the window. With a deep sigh, I returned to the meal, eating methodically and slowly. Each bite grounded me, as if my body knew it needed more strength. Unbidden, my thoughts began drifting. The memories I tried to bury rose to the surface again, moments where Aaron had taken care of me in small, quiet ways. The cup of tea he had brought me on late nights, the meals he had insisted I eat when stress consumed me, even the casual, almost unnoticed ways he ensured I was safe whenever we walked through unfamiliar packlands. These weren't grand gestures of love, they were small responsibilities born from duty. And yet, they still filled my chest with bittersweet ache. How naive I had been to think that those moments meant anything. Reality was a cold, sharp blade that cut through my illusions. Aaron's care didn't stem from love, it was obligation. He had always belonged to Caroline, had always thought of her as his future Luna. She was the one who had saved his life, after all. Compared to that, I was just a snowflake in a storm. I set the empty bowl aside, letting my hands fall uselessly into my lap. Aaron stepped forward without a word, clearing the table and stacking the bowls neatly. He worked without complaint, just as he always did. My wolf Bella was quiet, her energy curling inward as we both accepted the truth. There was no love here, only shadows of what could have been meaningful if circumstances were different. Aaron's measured actions and his steady presence had tethered me in the past. Now they were the anchor that made my chest ache heavier than before. Elder Catherine stirred in her sleep, bringing my attention back to her fragile form. It didn't matter how I felt about Aaron or Caroline or our severance. My focus had to remain on her and her recovery. Everything else could wait. Chapter 60, A Matriarch's Concern. A weak groan from Elder Catherine's bed pulled my gaze from the ticking clock on the wall. It was just past 8 p.m. The slow, rhythmic beeps of the monitor suddenly seemed louder in the quiet room. I leapt from my chair and hurried to her side, my heart pounding as if it would burst. "Grandmother?" My voice cracked with worry as I leaned closer. Her eyelids fluttered open, unfocused at first, then locking onto me. Relief surged through my chest, and my wolf Bella stirred restlessly, whispering a calming warmth into my mind. Freya, her voice was thin but steady, her lips curved into a faint smile, though her face was pale. "You look like you've seen a ghost. How are you feeling?" My words tumbled out hurriedly. "Are you dizzy? Can you see clearly? How many fingers am I holding up?" I raised 3 fingers in front of her face, watching her carefully for any sign of distress. Elder Catherine tilted her head, squinting exaggeratedly. 7? Or is it 12? My heart froze, and a lump formed in my throat. Panic clawed at my chest. I was about to call for the healer when a steady laugh broke through the tension. Aaron stood behind me, his deep voice filling the room. "Grandmother, don't tease her like that." Elder Catherine's smile widened into a sly grin. 3 fingers, Freya. I'm only joking." Her eyes twinkled with mischief despite her frailty. I placed a hand over my heart and exhaled shakily. "That wasn't funny," I whispered. My knees felt weak, so I gripped the edge of the bed to steady myself. "Don't scare her like that," Aaron scolded gently, stepping closer to the bed. Elder Catherine chuckled lightly. "She's too high-strung. Relax, little one. I'm tougher than I look." She reached for my hand and squeezed it softly. Without thinking, I leaned down and wrapped my arms around her shoulders, being careful not to disturb the wires and monitors. "You scared us," I murmured, my voice barely above a whisper. I held her for a moment, closing my eyes as the familiar scent of chamomile and sage, her comforting scent, washed over me. "I'm fine," she said softly, patting my back. "Really, child, I won't break." I pulled back reluctantly, wiping the moisture from my eyes as discreetly as I could. "You've been through so much today. Let me get you something to eat." The healer prepared special wolf broth to help you recover. Aaron stepped back but remained by the window, his sharp eyes scanning the room as if watching silently over us both. I moved quickly, grabbing the covered bowl from the bedside tray. The rich smell of herbs and spices filled the space as I opened it, the steam curling upward. Small sips, I said, helping Elder Catherine sit up slightly. Her frailty was a stark reminder of how much she'd endured. Don't rush. I blew softly on the spoon, cooling the broth before bringing it to her lips. She took a small sip, savoring the taste. This is quite good, she murmured. Would you like more? I asked, keeping my voice patient and soft. She nodded faintly, and I gave her another spoonful, careful not to spill. Bella hummed quietly within me, soothed by the small but comforting task. But after only a few more tastes, she closed her eyes and shook her head. That's enough for now, dear. I'm not that hungry. You need to eat more, I urged, though I didn't push too hard. I didn't want to upset her. Instead, I grabbed a warm cloth and carefully wiped her face. There, all nice and clean. Thank you, she said softly. Her hand briefly covered mine, a simple gesture, but it sent a wave of affection through me. I placed the bowl back on the tray and adjusted her blanket. Just as I was about to sit down again, her soft voice caught me off guard. You should leave. Her words were firm but gentle, yet they cut deeply. Both of you. Her tone made my chest tighten. I blinked in surprise, unsure if I'd heard her correctly. What? Leave? Grandmother, why would we leave? She waved a hand dismissively. The staff here can take care of me just fine. You don't need to be here all night. Aaron stepped forward, frowning deeply. What are you saying? His voice was a low rumble, not angry, but concerned. I'm saying, she began, pausing for a moment as if weighing her words, that I don't want to burden you any longer. I'm an old she-wolf, Aaron. Let me have some peace. Her words felt like a slap. No, I said quickly, shaking my head. You're not a burden. You could never be a burden. Elder Catherine smiled faintly, but it didn't reach her eyes. There was something deeper in her gaze. The surgery, it isn't important anymore. My chest tightened painfully. How can you say that? Of course it's important. We've come too far to give up now. She sighed wearily, leaning back against the pillows. I've lived a long life. This isn't worth troubling everyone over. You're wrong, I said firmly. Tears blurred my vision, but I refused to let them fall. We're staying. I'll stay until the surgery is done. I can sleep here, or we can move you somewhere more comfortable if you prefer. Whatever helps. Her brows knitted together slightly. Move? No, Freya. I'm staying here. This facility is more than adequate. I hesitated. Bella's senses prickled uneasily as I studied the lines of fatigue and something else, something guarded in her expression. If you don't want to stay here, we can take you back to the pack house. It's warmer there, and your room is more familiar. No, she said sharply. She softened quickly, patting my hand. No, dear, that would disrupt your lives. I'm better off here. The healers can monitor me closely. I opened my mouth to protest, but Aaron's hand on my arm stopped me. I turned to him in disbelief, ready to argue, but his expression was calm and resolute. We'll visit tomorrow, he said gently but firmly to Elder Catherine. You need rest, and so does Freya. I don't need rest, I interjected, shaking his hand off. I'm staying. She needs someone with her. Freya, Aaron's voice was low, steady, and filled with the unyielding strength of an alpha. We'll come back tomorrow. But tomorrow, he repeated, his golden eyes glowing faintly. Bella whimpered, reluctantly yielding to his authority. Elder Catherine's faint smile returned as she placed a hand over mine. Listen to him, child. One night won't change everything. A lump formed in my throat, but I forced a nod. All right, I said reluctantly, though every fiber of my being screamed to stay. Aaron gently guided me out of the room, his hand firm around my arm. I glanced back at Elder Catherine one final time before the door closed, her serene expression lingering in my mind. As we walked down the hall, the knot of frustration and guilt tightened in my chest. I didn't understand how Aaron could remain so calm, so detached in the face of her condition. My thoughts raced as I tried to process her words, her insistence, and the way she avoided certain subjects,